Blog Talk Radio.
They brought this man, Louis Medlin, the white man, brought his wife and set him at his side all during the time the trial was on it. His lawyer got up and said, "Judge, Your Honor, this man is not guilty, that he was just drinking, having a little fun." Said, "You see this woman sitting here at his side? This is the pure flower of life, God's greatest gift to man, this white woman. And do you think that he would leave this pure flower of life for that?" And so, that was the end of the trial.
They found him not guilty and dismissed the case. At that point, every black woman in the courtroom was in tears and angry and ready to do something. And they took the accuser out the back door. They took them out the back door, and when we all met down where Rob was, and he saw what our condition was and one woman said, these people have declared open season on black women. What are you going to say now? What are we going to do now? And that's when he made that statement.
I made a statement that if the law, if the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution cannot be enforced in this social jungle called Dixie, it is time that Negroes must defend themselves, even if it is necessary to resort to violence. That there is no law here, and there is no need to take the white taxes to the courts because they will be free, and that the federal government is not coming to the aid of people who are oppressed, and it is time for Negro men to stand up and be men, and that if it's necessary for us to die, we must be willing to die. If it's necessary for us to kill, we must be willing to kill.
Context of white supremacy, Gus T Renegade and Justice in for another program to share constructive information on racism, white supremacy. I hope you will keep that sound clip in mind as we progress through the broadcast. Very important. Very important. We'll talk more about that as we roll with the program. At any rate, our guest, he is making his 5th visit to the context of white supremacy. I always say be a very tough critic on yourself, and don't really pay too much attention to what other people have to say about your response to racism, white supremacy. But I do have a lot of regard and high level of respect for our guests coming on the program today and their entire organization, everybody at War on the Horizon. I'm real certain our guest and everybody that works with him, they would not be wasting their time to come and hang out with us repeatedly if they didn't think we were kind of attempting to move in the correct direction. So I'm just super appreciative that he's willing to come back and chat with us and share great information. I know a lot of listeners just have a great appreciation for the information that he always shares with us. And again, thank you to everybody at War on the Horizon for all of their support. Sister Natasha, everyone she called into the program, I know she is super serious about replacing white supremacy with justice right now. I know she would not be wasting her time listening to the broadcast and investing, supporting if we were just, participating in a lot of foolishness and Negro madness over here at the Cows. Please support the website. You can check out all of their work, their DVDs. They have outstanding products. The address is waronthehorizon.com. Again, it's waronthehorizon.com. They have a brand new 365 radio network playing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can tune in. Fantastic broadcast with Irritated Genie and Umar Abdullah Johnson. Brothers Keeper, they have their own program. Sister Nefertari with Children of Southampton, they have their own program every Sunday. The Cows, simulcast there every Tuesday. King Samir with the New Black Panther Party is every Wednesday. I'm messing the name up. My apologies. I will make sure I get it correct. Sister Fasami. There we go. Sister Fasami, she has her own broadcast. She's with the Drop Squad every Thursday. Brother Louis Ali, he's in Louisiana, has his own radio program down there. He broadcasts at Warm Horizon on Sundays as well. Fantastic information, support. Our guest, also author of the book, The War on the Horizon, Black Resistance to the White Sex Assault. Please support their efforts. What else to say, I guess, for today's program, making his fifth visit, the Irritated Genie of Soufeese. Irritated Genie, are you with us?
Yes, I am, brother. Welcome to the war front.
Outstanding. Good to hear from you, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. You know, we thank you for all of your support and all the brothers and sisters out there that are bearing with us as we begin the process of launching this radio station. We honored to have the cows and the children of Southampton and all the other guests, the Drop Squad, Sister Kasami, and all the other guests that you were mentioning to be willing to work on our radio station. And we're just really excited because I think it's time that we have some consistent, serious dialogue because we've been getting anything but that for quite some time.
I would unfortunately agree. Hopefully, this will be a part of the compensation and correction of that problem. I want to hop to it because I have a high regard for the material that we are covering today. But before we hop into that, I did want to take a quick moment to pitch some comments that people left from the last time you were here in August. Before I do that, I'm going to give the number out one time, so I don't have to waste a whole lot of time giving the number out. If you want to call in and listen to the program, you can dial 760-569-7676, and the code is 564943. So the number again, 760-569-7676. The code is 564943. You can call in, listen. There you go. And it's written on the show page. So if you missed it, just look on the show page. It's written in the comment section. Thank you to 818. She hooked me up. Okay, these were comments that were left from when you were with us in August, and I wanted to pitch them at you. I felt like you could give some quality responses to what these folks had to say. The first comment, the person said, so the ignorant masses aren't worth saving and should commit suicide to save those who want to get over, ? Incorrect class analysis. Dr. Kamal Cambone and Genie are not talking revolutionary suicide, but ultimately a Jim Jones strategy. Blacks do the job on their own people, building, studying, and getting rid of all pimps, academic and poverty pimps, and the enemy will fall by the wayside. A fool in the army is dangerous to his own cause and comrades. Get rid of the black slave masters. That was comment number one. Do you have any response to that?
Yes, that is the stupidest, most ignorant, ridiculous Negro statement that we can make. I'm just going to be real blunt tonight, if you don't mind. I don't have a problem calling people. I don't like to call people names, but we get some real ridiculous thoughts through our mind. Somehow or another, even though we all understand we didn't have pimps before the European enslaved us. We did not pimp each other. We did not have poverty pimps because we were not poor. Even though the source of all of our problems is the white race, we get these clowns in our race who are just, ultimately, I'm going to call them cowards. You can't be so stupid that you can't recognize that whites are the problem. So when and if we run into situations with people who are so afraid to confront the real source of the problem, which is the white race, I generally don't even comment with something like that because I am going to insult it. And in this particular case, that's what I did. I insulted the individual. And I hope they feel insulted enough to really rethink it and really ask themselves the honest question. Is the problem black people or is the problem racism, white supremacy? And if the problem is racism, white supremacy, which it is, who rules racism, white supremacy is whites. Okay, what are we going to do with the whites that enslave our people? If they can't answer that question, then as far as I'm concerned, they don't have a legitimate answer to our problems.
All righty. Let's see. The other comment related to this, I think, in some way, this person, and I think it's important to note, this person also recently left a comment saying that they are on the sideline until they figure out what to do. They are on the sideline, and they said sideline in quotes. So this person said, yes, Genie said some good points, had a lot of rules and demands, doing away with whites, in quotes. Having the white sex assault. What confuses me is when one says, don't have sex with whites, but not saying, don't work for white people, don't speak to white people, etc. To have rules or demands, you must go all the way, or say the more that you do not have contact with whites, the better. Any response to that comment?
I appreciate where the person is coming from, but this boils down to warfare strategy. We are in a war, and quite frankly, when you look at the logistical outlay of the war, you can do the second part, the latter part of what they said, which is make your time with Europeans as little as possible, particularly as it relates to your social interaction with them. But as it relates to economics and our very existence and survival, that is part of what racism white supremacy is. They have created a construct where it is very difficult, in some places and in some particular instances, almost impossible for a person to completely divorce themselves of whites because they put themselves in a power position over all the means for survival of our people on this planet. As a result, your next best solution is what he said: limit your contact with whites. Limit your contact with their culture, with their television, with their thinking, but it is not practical. You know, no black people make cars. So hence, if you're going to limit your interaction with whites completely and absolutely, then you can't have a car. Well, then you can't get around. Or you can't use public transportation because we don't own the bus system. Well, you can't get to work. Or you can't work for a European because, you know, you don't have your own job, so you have to have your own business. But if you're not in a position to have your own business, then you starve to death. That's not practical. No, we don't want to have to work for whites, which is why we struggle to find means to generate income so that we can free ourselves enough that we can fight this war better. But it is practical that you have to have these type of interactions with whites because this is what racism and white supremacy is. They make you make some concessions. However, we don't generally have to lay down and sleep with Europeans. And in that instance, then we should not. Brother Gus and Warren Horizon and other groups are not talking about our brothers and sisters who were on a slave plantation, black women who were raped by whites, saying they should have never laid down with the whites. Well, they were not choosing to do that. They were forced to do that. We are not in the same exact situation. We are not physically forced to go sleep with the whites. So hence, it makes perfectly practical sense for us to say not to do something that we didn't want to do during slavery, and now we have the option not to do, then we shouldn't do it. So it makes sense. It's good warfare strategy. And just because you fight in an absolute manner on one level doesn't mean that on another level, when it's practical, that you don't make concessions in order to wage an intelligent, effective war.
I just want to make sure I remind people I'm not interested in your feedback. That's why I don't have comments on my page anymore. I feel like non-white people can utilize their time and energy in many more constructive ways than taking time to write on my page. And I don't care either way. If you like the show, if you don't like the show, if you think it's constructive, if you don't think it's constructive, I'm sure there's something better you could be doing to fight this war of racism, white supremacy, than scrawling about what happened on the cows. So don't leave any comments on my page. Thank you. I'm going to check out Justice to see if she has some comments to ask. Justice, if you are there, your line is open. Go right ahead.
Hello. How does being on this show help you replace white supremacy with justice?
Thank you, young lady. I really appreciate that question. It's a great question. It helps me and the organization I represent, One Horizon, replace white supremacy with justice because the first stage in any warfare is the intellectual stage where we have to get the mindset correct to understand what the goal is and what the objective of the war is. The goal and objective is to replace racism and white supremacy with justice, which the translation of War on the Horizon, we call it resolution, to end the problem once and for all. In order for us to do that, we have not determined a way that we can do it on our own, which means we have to solicit the support of our people to do this. In order to do that, we have to touch our people mentally, meaning we have to get our people to have an agreement, not only that this is the only solution, but that it is the best solution. And then we have to dialogue so that we can come to a conclusion of how we get to the final solution. The best way that we have found to do that is to have what we call media or use media, a means by which to speak to our people and implant ideas in their minds so that we can have a collective discussion, so that we can organize and come up with the best ideas possible. The C.O.W.S is a place that has set up a constructive means for Africans who are serious about the survival of our race to come to the forum, put out ideas to any number of black people who cannot actually be counted and identified across the planet, who are impregnated with good ideas. And the final idea, which is to end the problem of white aggression against African people on this planet. And perhaps even if we don't give them the answer, we encourage them to begin to think about what that answer is, and thus that may be ultimately that one person who comes up with the one idea that can have the one resolution may be reached by this means. So this is how the C.O.W.S helps One Horizon get out the message, which we think is the most important message that really, as African people, we've ever had since we've been on this planet. That is to end once and for all the ability of the white race to inflict damage and harm among black people.
In the description, the phrase turn the other cheek was used. What does the phrase turn the other cheek mean in the description?
Okay. Whites have created a backwards concept among black people, which they taught us primarily through the religious system of racism and white supremacy that we call Christianity. And this concept is a complete reverse concept of the natural order of the universe, meaning the natural law of the universe, which one can determine by basic observation, is that it's called the law of self-preservation. And the law of self-preservation says basically an object at rest tends to remain at rest until acted upon by the outside force, meaning whether a thing is living or even an inanimate object. If you go to a door, if it has a doorknob on it, if you don't turn it or pull it or apply some pressure, the doorknob is going to stay there. If you go out and you look at a blade of grass and you go someplace where you see there's people lay concrete over the grass, eventually you see grass over time busting through the concrete. If you see a baby, it cries because it wants food. It's trying to survive. If you see an animal, it tries to escape harm and it tries to eat to continue its life and then reproduce. Everything is hardwired on this planet to try to continue to exist. That is the natural order of things. Whites have taught black people the very opposite, that we should strive not to protect our existence. So the very natural law is that, you love those things that help you survive. You try to fight against those things that are hurting your survival. They have taught us the exact opposite through what we call Christianity. They have taught us to love those things which try to destroy us and to hate ourselves. And so they tell us that black is bad. They taught us that God was white and the devil was black, and so we were evil as black and we were supposed to be servants to whites. And they taught us that we should hate black and then that we should worship and love white, which is the exact opposite. So turn the other cheek means instead of fighting with those who fight with you, they told us if they hit us on one cheek, that instead of turning around and hitting them back, we should hold another cheek out for them to hit us. In other words, we should allow whites to abuse us, and we should not do anything in response to their abuse to us, which is the exact reverse of what we should do. We should try to end white supremacy and white aggression.
Thank you. That will be all for now.
Thank you.
Context of white supremacy. This program, we are exchanging views on a legend. I really hope people will research. I stick to Mr. Fuller's suggestion of not referencing black people as men and women in the system of white supremacy, but I think anybody, if you get some information on Mr. Robert Franklin Williams, you are getting real close to what black manhood should look like. Real close. I hope people here in this program, there's, an excellent documentary that you can check out, same title, Negroes with Guns. I hope you will read his autobiography because this is a sterling example. I don't think I could pick a better one except maybe Malcolm X's autobiography in terms of you really get just incredible information that you just don't get from the documentary if you read the book. It's not that long. It's only about 130 pages. Read the book. Robert Franklin Williams, Negroes with Guns. Pretty early on in the book, this is on page 24 and 25. This is the third time here at the Cows we've had Dr. Baruti on, and then the following day, Irritated Genie. Very impactful 24-hour segment of shows. Dr. Baruti talked about yesterday the sex imperative and how for white people, I think Irritated Genie would say for whites, sex and violence are one and the same. And I see that all the time, whether you're looking at lynchings or Amadou Diallo, this is consistent for white people, whites. On page 24 and 25, and this is actually a little bit before you get to Mr. Williams' writing. This is from Truman Nelson, and this is an essay he titled "The Resistant Spirit," and he's offering a critique of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he writes, King quotes Gandhi on willingness to go to jail, if necessary. Quotes him saying, one should go as a bridegroom enters the bride's chamber. How ironic this is, and how naive. The young lad who goes into a southern jail is actually more of a reluctant, terrified bride. There are perverts in these southern jails. Perverts, sadists, sexually corrupt men of unspeakable desires and violences. These evil men are part of the penal apparatus of the white South. The beatings, kickings, and floggings, and other sexual indulgences they administer upon men sent among them for protesting racial injustices are approved by the authorities as part and parcel of the process of enforcement. Not only are they approved, but prisoners are offered rewards for carrying them out. I'm skipping a little bit. Next page he goes on to say, the fact is that real punishment, the de facto punishment of those arrested for protesting racist practices comes during that confinement, which King, quoting Gandhi, endorses like a bridegroom entering a bride's chamber. This is not to say that this cause is not worthy of going to jail for, but to candy this experience over with this saccharine rhetoric, so characteristic of this movement, prevents people from seeing the Southern jailhouses for what they really are, hellholes of human degradation, only slightly better than the Hitler death camps, infernos where freedom riders, after their routine beatings by 5 or 6 deputies, have had their fingers bent back until they broke, their pants slashed, and high-voltage electric cattle goads applied to their testicles, where women have been whipped with wide leather belts on their bare breasts, buttocks, and between their legs. This sounds very much like the white sex assault. Could you kind of offer your thoughts on that passage?
Yes, I am. This is very interesting that you mention that because, and this conversation takes us a little bit in the direction I think that it's very good for us to talk about. It's exactly the white sex assault. And one of the things that our people don't understand is that this whole rape, molestation, homosexuality is at the centerpiece of white supremacy and white aggression. It is not something that is coming to the surface now because it's something that's just beginning to happen more and more. It has actually always been at the core of the European. In the core of the European culture here, we find a homosexual pedophile who seeks out other individuals and groups to assault and exploit with sexual violence. Violence/sex, which are the same things for them. So whether it's brutalizing a black man and lynching him and cutting off his penis, or sodomizing a man in prison and busting his intestines like they did our brother Abdulima with the nightstick, you get a very savage, demented European whose full enjoyment in life is the torture and abuse of others. And what they have done, it's a very strange marriage. It makes the European a very strange and psychopathic and psychotic being. But they have married what we would normally refer to as religion and spirituality to sexual deviance, so that they indoctrinate black people with spiritually homosexual, effeminized, backwards, and corrupt spiritual madness that will supplement physical sexual violence. So in other words, they'll have a black man going around talking about he'll turn his other cheek. When you think of cheeks, you think of the behind. A man does not talking about turning his behind over to another man. It is a very, even the suggestion or thought of it, it has a homosexual feel to it, and it does intentionally. This is the Europeans' way of turning the black male and the black masses of people and Native Americans into a humble, soft, weak, effeminized race of people who will allow abuse to occur to them very passively. And so this whole sexual assault that we see in the prisons is only a magnified, it's a magnification of the day-to-day desires that go on in the European mind. What do they thrive off? The economic exploitation of people around the planet, the sexual exploitation of people around the planet, the genocide and murder of these people are all part of the European psychosexual mentality that has them putting homosexual commercials on, men in dresses, has them having child pornography going around the world, homosexual movies where they want to show males engaged in sexual misbehavior with one another, females engaged with sexual behavior with one another, adults having sex with children, and they actually get corrupt individuals in our community, the Eddie Longs of the world, who, again, we talk about this marriage between this sexual psychotic behavior and quote-unquote spirituality. So you have these so-called preachers, these religious icons in the black community, who are funded by whites to go and become big, popular people in our community so that they can have access to rape multitudes of our children, so that they can disrupt and disturb our community so that then whites can continue to brutalize and harm black people. And at the same time, it is easy for white males now to have sexual access to black males because there's so many homosexuals who've been created by these black males who they put into these positions in these religious institutions where sexual madness and sexual confusion and sexual exploitation of our people is gained through attacking them through the spiritual concepts that are put into our minds, which were all passed down to us from Europeans who gave us what we call Christianity, which is nothing but the spiritual system of racism and white supremacy. So it is a very, and I know we're going to get into the context of talking about Robert F. Williams, but see, this is one thing we don't understand, and I want to talk a little bit about it because the gentleman was talking about Martin Luther King. We need to understand something about Martin Luther King, and it's so appropriate that we talk about this now. Martin Luther King existed because of one black man, Robert F. Williams. I'm going to say that again. The reason that you know the name Martin Luther King is not because of what he did. Whites were in a very, very dangerous and precarious position as it relates to racism and white supremacy. With the onslaught and the onset of Robert F. Williams and his group in Monroe, North Carolina, who is really the major inspiration for the Black Panther Party, for the entire Black Power movement, for SNCC, for CORE, and for what we call now the Black Power movement. He was the inspiration, the Republic of New Africa, the BLA, the Black Liberation Army, the single individual most responsible for inspiring that whole movement was Robert F. Williams. He became so popular and such a threat to whites that they had to find someone to counter the strong, self-resistant, respect yourself, stand up for yourself, arm yourself, protect yourself values that he was putting out there, and actually picking up guns and fighting with the Ku Klux Klan, as we'll begin to talk about some of that. In order to combat them, they had to make a figure who they could then put out there and try to get our people to follow. And the one that they found who had the best speaking, who could capture the most of our people, and that they could get some of our people to listen to was Martin Luther King. And the only reason that you know Martin Luther King is not because he was fighting against white supremacy. In many cases, he was fighting against the people who were fighting against white supremacy. The reason we know Martin Luther King is because he was created by whites to fight against Robert F. Williams. And if I could, I'd like to go to some of the things in the book, talk a little bit about the Martin Luther King part of it, because I think this is a very important piece of the dialogue that we're having. I'm going to the old book, the original publication of the book. If we go to page 13, it's talking about how Martin Luther King used to do speeches where he was paid by the whites to go out and speak against Robert F. Williams and what amounts now to being the early Black Power movement. Before it was called Black Power movement, it was Robert F. Williams and his revolutionary NAACP chapter in Monroe, North Carolina. Monroe, North Carolina was the regional eastern headquarters of the Ku Klux Klan, meaning if you were on the East Coast, all the Klan met on a regular basis at the headquarters in Monroe, North Carolina, and they would march 10,000 to 15,000 at a time, rape, pillage, murder. We'll talk about some of the incidents that occurred on a regular basis. And here's Martin Luther King as Robert F. Williams began to organize the black people of Monroe, North Carolina, and prevent the Klan from raping black women and brutalizing black people. Here's Martin Luther King speaking out against Robert F. Williams. He said it is unfortunately true that however the Negro acts, his struggle will not be free of violence initiated by his enemies, talking about white folks. And he will need ample courage and willingness to sacrifice to defeat this manifestation of violence. But if he seeks If he seeks it and organizes it, meaning if the black man and black woman decide to use violence, then we cannot win. Does this leave the Negro without a positive method to advance? Mr. Robert F. Williams would have us believe that there is no collective and practical alternative. He argues that we must be cringing and submissive or take up arms. To so place the issue distorts the whole problem. There are other meaningful alternatives. And then this Negro goes on to basically encourage black people to pray and protest to the goodwill of whites, and to basically allow them to brutalize us, and by us allowing them to brutalize us over and over, that it will break down their will to be violent, because the goodness in the hearts of the whites who enslaved us and are murdering will come out. This is important not because we're talking about two different philosophies. One of them is a philosophy, self-defense, how do we defend ourselves from others. The other one is pathology, is sickness. No intelligent human being, and I'm talking about Martin Luther King Jr., stands before his race who is being brutally assaulted, telling them the way to prevent this brutal assault is to just stand there and get banged in the head. To take our women out there to get water hoses put on them and dogs sicked upon them. It is a ridiculous, sick, pathological Negro madness. If we go deeper into the book, because I want to give some of these quotes by King, because I just want people to understand, when I say that Martin Luther King was created by whites for the purpose of fighting against Robert F. Williams, I want people to understand how insidious it is. These Negroes like Martin Luther King were paid assassins. They were paid for the purpose of specifically making black people put down their arms and continue to be slaves. If we go to page 20 in the original book, Negroes with Guns, it says at other times, however, Williams had made serious charges which should be further ventilated. He claims that hundreds of thousands of dollars are being sent into the South to convert the Negroes into nonviolence, to buy the militancy out of them, and thereby to prolong the very condition of passivity to wrong which he feels brought on the brutal exploitation of the Negro in the first place. He says the Uncle Toms of the South are the most outspoken opponents of nonviolence and profit most from the form of struggle is presently taking. In other words, literally, in order to prevent black people from organizing and protecting ourselves, we always taught that we didn't fight back. You know, why do we let them do this to us and things of that nature? Well, most of us fought back a lot. But in order to prevent us from going to the next step of fighting back, which is fighting directly against whites in armed struggle, the whites always pay black people in our community to come out and tell us not to fight back. If we go into, did you have something you about to say, brother?
If you got some more, please, let's hear it.
Okay, we're going to go into the book because these are some very important quotes. This is in the new book, and you can go out and buy it. It's called Negroes with Guns by Robert F. Williams. He talks about a conference in 1959 that the NAACP called. Now, let me just make something clear. The NAACP, and you can do the research for yourself, you can look up Mary White Overton, a small hat, white so-called Jew. It was started by small hats for the purpose of killing nationalist movements and making sure that black people never achieved independence. It was created to create confusion, to push black people into situations of wanting to integrate with whites, the larger white population, which they knew would create issues and they knew would never allow us to be a free and independent people and would allow them to continue to profit off of our exploitation. And the first major nationalist organization that the NAACP worked to take down was the UNIA, Marcus Garvey's movement. If you look at the history of black people in America, the major white nemesis to black nationalism has not been the Ku Klux Klan. The major nemesis to black nationalism and black independent thinking and action is the small hat, the white so-called Jew, who created an organization called the NAACP for the purpose of fighting against African nationalism and black nationalism. This is a conference called in 1959. Essentially what had happened is that there was a black woman in Monroe, North Carolina. And this is just one of many incidents, and we'll read some of these incidents to just understand the day-to-day life that black people in the South were living back in the 1950s. But essentially a black woman who had 5 children and was pregnant, I think she was 8 months pregnant or so, was at her house. A drunken white mechanic walked to her house, dragged her off her porch, and took her to the street to rape her. And she was fortunate that he was so drunk that her 5-year-old son picked up a brick or a piece of wood or something and hit the white boy in the head and dragged his mother away from the rape to save her. And all the black people in Monroe were outraged and went to the process of saying, okay, we're not going to tolerate this. We're going to go kill this white boy. And Robert F. Williams, trying to let the letter of law be operated, said, no, we're going to let the law take care of this. And they went to trial. And at the trial, the white attorney, the defense attorney for the white male who tried to rape the sister, said, look, I want you to look at this white pearl of beauty and ask yourself, would this white male leave his home and leave this white pillar of beauty for that thing over there? And they went back and didn't take any time to deliberate, and they all found him not guilty. And then the black women came to Robert F. Williams and said, okay, this is your fault. You told us to let this happen. Now it's open season on black women to get raped and brutalized in our city, Robert. What you going to say now? And so as the new head of the NAACP, who had armed his group to protect their group against the onset of Ku Klux Klan attacks, he went on the live wire, the live press, and said from here on out, if it's necessary to kill and lynch in order to prevent lynchings and killings, then that's what we're going to do. We are now going to take justice into our own hands, and we are going to, for every rape, there will be a lynching. For every rape of a black woman, there will be lynching of a white male. He just went on to say, basically, we're going to deal with things an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. We are no longer going to wait for white justice to enforce justice for our people. We're going to enforce the law on our own terms. And it was such an outrage in the NAACP because this wayward chapter was now saying we will defend our own people. We will not be waiting around for no justice courts or anything of that nature, that the whites, the small hats, paid all of your so-called black leadership from all around the country to come to one place for the specific purpose of all speaking out against Robert F. Williams. And so I'm going to read this part in the book that talks about that meeting. The 50th anniversary convention of the NAACP that summer of 1959 became a highly public trial whose central issue was whether or not Robert F. Williams would remain suspended. He was suspended from that chapter of the NAACP. The national office printed up a pamphlet. The single issue in the Robert F. Williams case, that was the name of it, the single issue in the Robert F. Williams case, and distributed to his delegates. The national office not only controlled the platform, Lewis Lomax wrote, but they subjected the Williams forces to a heavy bombardment from the NAACP's big guns. Now listen to this very closely, brothers and sisters, because these are the individuals that whites tell us to love. Thurgood Marshall visited the New York offices of the FBI on June 4th, 1959, and urged the FBI agents to investigate Robert F. Williams in connection with efforts to combat communist attempts to infiltrate the NAACP. So here you got a black man saying we're not going to let black women get raped, and Thurgood Marshall goes and says investigate him and tear this man down. Roy Wilkins twisted every available arm. Martin Luther King Jr. deployed his eloquence. Daisy Bates, the heroine of Little Rock, agreed to denounce Williams for advocating armed self-defense after the national office consented to buy $700 a month in advertising from her newspaper so that she could pay armed guards at her home. 40 speakers, including King, Bates, and dozens of distinguished lawyers, rose one after the other to denounce Williams. But when the burly ex-Marine from Monroe finally strode down the aisle to speak, he was neither intimidated nor penitent. And listen to what he said, brothers and sisters. This is short and sweet, and this is just part of his speech. But he said, please, I ask you not to come crawling to these whites on your hands and knees and make me a sacrificial lamb. We as men should stand up as men and protect our women and children. I am a man, and I will walk upright as a man should. I will not crawl. Brothers and sisters, here you have a black man living in a place where black women routinely are raped. Routinely. I want you to understand what I'm saying. Routinely get raped. Black men routinely get lynched. And he says we're not going to allow this to happen. In 1955, the way it all started was in 1955, he got out of the Korean War and he came home. He was an Army guy. He was a Marine. And when he came to his home in Monroe, North Carolina, he saw that there was just so much violence going on in the city, but not just violence against black people, but there were black people who were sharecroppers and they were afraid to do anything for themselves. So he went to the NAACP to join, but they saw that he was not the kind of guy who was an aristocratic kind of person. He wanted to help all black people, not just rich or light-skinned or if you're part of certain societies. He wasn't involved in that. It was just about helping our people. So they literally abandoned the whole chapter and left it to him and a few other brothers and sisters who began to go around and get brothers and sisters who were sharecroppers, poor brothers and sisters, and say, hey, let's organize to do something for ourselves. And so that began the process of them being meeting, talking about what they could do to help the community. And as they began to do that, they began to realize how many acts of violence against black people, blatant rape and murder of black people were going on in the community. They said, we're going to bring an end to this. And so when the Ku Klux Klan found out that they were meeting, they came and shot up their house in their meeting. They came and shot up the meeting. So Robert F. Williams, being from the Army, coming out the military from the Marines, he sent a request for a charter to the NRA, National Rifle Association. And they gave him a charter. Now, and here's the beautiful thing is that his wife was with him the entire process as a partner and went with him and walked with him the entire way. And so he got a charter to have guns. And then they even went up, most people don't know, but he even went up, Brother Malcolm X invited him to Mosque number 7 when he was in the Nation of Islam and let him speak up there to raise money, and they raised money and gave the money to Robert F. Williams and his brothers and sisters so that they could buy the guns to protect their people. So that's how they got their guns. And I just want to say this because it's relevant to the work that we're doing today. If someone would have took Robert F. Williams' work, and instead of him getting that money and using it for what they were trying to do, took that money and went and done something for their own personal benefit, we would not have a Black Power movement. There are some things that are very sacred. It was a sacred thing. Brother Malcolm said, we're going to put money together, we're going to give it to him. He did not take the money to buy a bigger house. He did not take the money to buy a bigger car. He took the money to buy guns to protect his people against violence. I'm saying that to say this is the definition, and this is in many ways a story that shows us what real nationalism is about. And so he took those guns back and began to protect black people, and this is where he began to run into the problem because basically the Negroes who were like Martin Luther King and these other Negroes who had become rich or who were making a living by trying to keep black people docile and effeminized and refusing to fight were now in jeopardy of losing their good Negro jobs because there was a black man who was getting black people riled up. And if black people are getting riled up, then as a Negro who's being paid by the small hat to keep our people from being riled up, you will lose your job and your way of life. So these Negroes began to come together along with the small hats and try to investigate ways to destroy the legacy of this man. And this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I'm going to read this part because I think this is really a telltale sign. I want you to understand, brothers and sisters, everything that we've been taught about history by our white slave masters is corrupt. They give us pieces, but we don't understand how corrupt the pieces are. This is Robert F. Williams, who at the time was the most important and popular black figure in this country. He was the most important figure in this country. In fact, during the course of his life, at every step of the stage of his life, he was more important and far more relevant than Martin Luther King Jr. But listen to this. So on page 24 of the introduction in the new book, 2 weeks after the 1959 NAACP convention, FBI agents reported to J. Edgar Hoover that Robert F. Williams had recently begun selling a newsletter known as The Crusader on the streets of Monroe. The Crusader's self-proclaimed mission was advancing the cause of race, pride, and freedom. So let me just stop. I know nobody thought this stupid, but I really got to slow walk this. Robert F. Williams and his people now put their money together and produced a paper. The people bought the paper and began to feel good about being black and began to say, we're going to stand up for ourselves, have some pride and dignity, and build our own communities up and protect one another. Similar to what Marcus Garvey did with the UNIA, up you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. And the paper that he used to do that was called The Crusader. Sample mailings yielded several thousand subscribers across the country for The Crusader. Listen to this, brothers and sisters. Within weeks, the first published biography of Martin Luther King Jr. appeared, hastily assembled by a member of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference's Board of Directors. It was called Crusader Without Violence. Listen to what I'm saying. King was nobody. Robert F. Williams had the pulse of black America in his hand. He had a medium, like the young sister asked earlier. How is it constructive to be on the cows? The cows is our modern-day version of the Crusader. How do we get the message of black racial pride and warfare against our mortal enemy, the white race? How do we get that message to our people and inspire our people to feel better about ourselves and do something about our condition? We have to have a media to speak to our people on a regular basis. That is the cows, that is the Crusader. In an attempt to squash the importance of the Crusader and to prevent that positive, constructive message from getting to our people, the whites paid money and wrote a quick book and took the name, The Crusader, and changed it and called it Crusader Without Violence, a book about Martin Luther King. In other words, the whites are trying now to pick who we are going to follow. Are we going to follow a black man who stands up and says, I will pull out a gun and blow your brains out if you try to think about raping my woman? Or are we going to put up a man that tells you that if you murder 3 little girls in a Baptist church, that it was better that our children died than the white folks? Well, you know which one they're going to pick. And so here, systematically, even to this day, we celebrate Martin Luther King Day. Yeah, they're celebrating the Negro that they made for the particular purpose of destroying the man who ultimately, most people don't know this, when Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, they were doing a protest. And when they got arrested in California, they were reading this book called Negroes with Guns. Listen to it, brothers, Negroes with Guns. And after reading this book, they said, we're going to do what this man in here has done. We're going to create an organization called the Black Panther Party. Even goes further to organizations like SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. What was the inspiration for that? Negroes with Guns, Robert F. Williams. The Republic of New Africa. Who was their giant? Who was their deity, for lack of a better term? You know, who was their icon? Like if you talk about the nationalist community during the 20s, it's Marcus Garvey. If it's black Muslims in America, it's Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. If you're talking about the Black Liberation Movement, the organization, their icon was none other than Robert F. Williams. That was the motivation for the birth of the Black Panther Party. And in fact, in the later part of the book, you'll find that when Robert F. Williams and his group were fighting in North Carolina, they realized, their children couldn't use the pool, but they were paying taxes, so they said, we either want our own pool or we want to have hours where we can use the pool, and then y'all use the pool at your time. We don't have to be using the pool when you're using it, but we want to have access to a facility that we pay for with our taxes. And so they said, you know what, we're going to put together a 10-point program that determines all of our demands, and then we're going to work towards getting these demands. It was that 10-point program that was the inspiration for the Black Panther Party's 10-point program. What I'm saying is that they have systematically erased the man, and we haven't even talked about all the things that the man has done. We just talked a little bit about what they've done. But the whites systematically have tried to erase the most important man of his time. If there's one man that you can pick, if you believe that the Black Power movement had power and that we need another one, the single man who was the greatest driving force behind that particular movement and what came out of it was a man that they've tried to erase from history. How have they tried to erase from history? Not only by not sharing this information that was available about the man with us, but by creating a separate individual who was not giving us constructive information, but rather was giving us wrong information, made him a hero that we still hold in high regard in our community today, thus making us intellectually handicapped to do anything about our situation. Martin Luther King Jr. was a nobody who was made into a somebody by whites for the purpose of keeping us from knowing about the real people who were out here fighting for the struggle of African liberation in the black community. On that same page it says, in a series of public debates, Williams faced Martin Luther King, A.J. Musty, Baird Rustin, David Dellinger, and others. He drew a large audience to his debate with pacifists. Why am I bringing this up? Because I think it's very important again. Brothers and sisters, who is Baird Rustin? It goes back to Gus's earlier question. When Robert F. Williams was saying, why is Martin Luther King glorifying going to prison as if you've done something right to go to prison? And what he was really saying was, you guys that are doing this, that have some resources and have these small hats by your side, you go to jail and you get right out. But the rest of our people end up in these jails, and these men get raped, getting brutalized, and things of that nature, and that's not healthy. So he's like, you being very deceitful because he has the means by which you can just walk out of those prisons. Some of our brothers and sisters walk out of these environments, these effeminized environments, and guess who is promoting this? The black male, Baird Rustin, who was the homosexual, who was sent to Martin Luther King. Why was he sent to Martin Luther King? He was sent to Martin Luther King after the 1955 boycott, the Montgomery bus boycott, where we did what essentially amounted to a nationalist boycott. The black people got together and said, we're not going to give you money until you treat us correctly, and it was successful. And after that time, if you notice, King never did another economic boycott. Why? Because they sent Baird Rustin to him, and when Martin Luther King's house got bombed, he had men with guns outside, and he had guns in his home. Who went to his home and told him, no, Martin Luther King, you shouldn't have guns. It goes against nonviolent struggle. You need to study Gandhi. A flaming, self-admitted, degenerate, low-lifed homosexual, Baird Rustin, who was financed by the small hats and sent as a target to Martin Luther King to take him off kilt of being a proper spokesman for black people and to use his voice to galvanize our people to remain weak, soft, and effeminized. And so from 1955 to 1964, a major part of Martin Luther King's philosophy was created by a vicious, sadistic homosexual, Baird Rustin, which is why he got absolutely nothing accomplished. Even to the point of when Martin Luther King was going to the March on Washington, he was not the one that ran the March on Washington. It was Baird Rustin who was appointed the executive director of the March on Washington. I believe it was Kennedy or Johnson. I think it was Kennedy that appointed him that. And the point being, Martin Luther King was not even supposed to talk about no integrationism or nothing like that. There was another speech he was supposed to give. He was supposed to give a speech about black empowerment, which he turned on the last minute and gave his own "We Shall Love All the White Folks" speech, and that whole thing was railroaded. The March on Washington was not supposed to be anything about integration. It was a movement that had gotten inspired by people like Robert F. Williams. It was grassroots people who said, we're going to go to Washington, D.C., we're going to lay down on the landing field so they can't lane planes. We're going to lay down in the streets so they can't run their cars. We're going to break into the houses of Senate and Congress. We're going to completely disrupt this country right at its core in Washington and shut the whole nation down. When the government got wind that this was happening, they called together what they called the Big Six, Abernathy, Roy Wilkins, Beard Rustin, Martin Luther King, Andrew Young, and one more individual. And they invited them there, and they said, you guys are going to take this thing over, and we're going to make it an integrated thing. Black people gave whatever little money they had from places like Mississippi, and all around the country, said, we're going to go shut this whole country down. And when they got here, Pickerwood's walking around saying, how you doing? They're not expecting the white folks. It was not designed to be integrated. It was a grassroots power move for our people. Again, paid assassin Negro, Uncle Tom, put in the midst of our people to block the progress and to fight against the message of people in particular. And I have to say this, as much as I love Brother Malcolm, I mean, his words were beautiful, but in terms of the one individual who they were most afraid of during that time, even more than Malcolm X, the one individual they were most afraid of was Robert F. Williams. And he became the inspiration for this movement. The last part, I just want to do one more part, and then I'm sure you got some questions you want to pose. But I do want to do this one little part of the book because I think it's very important. And I don't even have to read that part, but let me just explain it. I want people to understand. Some things confuse us sometimes. Sometimes, we got to all admit sometimes, some of us, we see some crackers do stuff, and we be like, well, is that a good cracker? Or why, even if we know it ain't a good cracker, we go, why is this cracker trying to help black people? I don't understand it. Here's what's really deep. Not only were the whites who were raping and brutalizing black people, the Ku Klux Klans and the racists, not only were they the bad guys, but the whites, not only were they fighting against Robert F. Williams, but the white small hats, the Freedom Riders. Most people don't understand, why are these whites going down south trying to fight against racism and racist aggression in the South? Here's what you're going to find real interesting. Robert F. Williams' message was becoming so accepted in the inner city neighborhoods that people were galvanizing really for warfare. They were getting to watch riots and all this stuff. They were listening to Robert F. Williams and people who were spreading his message all around the country. So the small hats being the major proponents of black nationalism and black progress and black self-determination, so we have got to discredit Robert F. Williams and his self-defense posture. So they say, this is what we'll do. We'll ride together. We'll pay some black folks and some white folks to come together, and they'll ride down south and show everybody there's no reason for black people to be saying things that are that terrible. Whites will not attack other whites like that. That's what they thought. They didn't realize those crackers in the South wasn't really that sophisticated. They didn't care if you was white or black. You was coming down there, and they thought you were trying to help black people. They started shooting them. So when they got to Monroe, North Carolina, when they got to most parts of the South, they didn't have any problem. The whites in those different regions, kind of, the crackers came down, the small hats walked, marched a little bit, and there was no issues. When they got to Monroe, North Carolina, these crackers didn't really actually measure it properly. They walked around one day, and the crackers didn't do anything, so they thought that it was going to be just like the other cities that these freedom riders, so-called, had gone through. And they were like, see, Robert F. Williams, we told you didn't need to use this violence. People, you don't have to listen to Robert F. Williams and these people who are saying you don't have to get violent, black people. You don't have to defend yourself. You just got to be nonviolent. The second day, while these crackers were walking around marching, a white boy walked up and just shot one of them in the stomach. Next thing you know, they chasing these crackers and Negroes that were with these whole freedom riders. They chasing them through the woods, trying to murder them and kill them. They all scattered. They lose one another. And who has to come to their rescue and start trying to save them? Robert F. Williams and his organized group of armed brothers and sisters. So now Robert F. Williams is playing a superhero, running around trying to save a bunch of Peckerwoods and Negroes that came down there and were paid to go down there to try to discredit his whole idea that we needed to defend and protect ourselves. I bring up that point because it's real interesting. We thinking that, we always do this. Why did John Brown do what he did? It is very interesting what you find when you find the people who are really the key to any time period. So if you find Marcus Garvey and realize he is the key to the 1920s, you begin to understand the NAACP and all these other things that are going on and what these whites' motivations, they were not good. But how do you find out? You have to know what the real pulse of that time was. Once you study Robert F. Williams, you begin to understand Beard Rustin. You begin to understand the NAACP. You begin to understand the Freedom Riders. You begin to understand the Black Power movement. and the integrationist Negro movement, you begin to understand that Martin Luther King, who was really, again, a made man by the whites, why did he eventually get killed? Because under the weight and stress of a real movement that was developing, here you have a man who had pretty much lived as a traitor to his race for many decades, or for many years, I should say, Martin Luther King, at least a decade, from 55 to almost 65. And he begins to see real men like Kwame Ture, who was Stokely Carmichael at that time, Robert F. Williams calling him a Negro and a coward, and real people galvanizing and organizing for our race. He begins to feel the weight bear the weight of now he's getting informed, sitting down with meetings with Honorable Elijah Muhammad, sitting down meeting with individuals like Kwame Ture, geniuses, people who read books for real, don't sit around reading the Bible all damn day, read real books about real things that are occurring. He's getting educated, and now he realizes, one, I'm a fool. Two, I've been misled, going out giving speeches about being Greek love and all this kind of stuff, and loving your enemy and all this kind of foolishness. And my people are getting slaughtered, and now he begins to question his own conscience. Is it right for me to be saying all of this, or should I start speaking out against what these whites are doing around the world? And he begins to start traveling in that direction and threatening to link up with the black nationalist movement, and the whites say, okay, our good boy is getting a little dangerous. When he spoke out against the Vietnam War, they said, okay, we can't take this chance. As much dirt as we have on him and we can expose on him, if he brings his group and with his influence, they join with the black nationalist groups, the Panthers, SNCC, CORE, and he abandons the small hat financial interests, and he abandons the white authority, we could have a real revolution in this country. It is not what he did, it's what he could have done why they killed that man, which does not really make him a martyr, because there were people who really did the work, like Robert F. Williams. So I'm going to stop right here, because I could just keep going, brother, and let you interject and ask some questions, and then we can talk more about this topic.
Context of white supremacy, our guest, let's visit the Irritated Genie of Soufeese. The website is waronthehorizon.com, and you can hear a lot of the programs that he's done. Just check out their radio network. If you go to the website, waronthehorizon.com, click the player. It's on the right side of the page. You'll see it. Just click it. It'll open it up, and it's streaming 24/7. I want to go and see if Justice has some questions, but before I do, I just want to throw in three things. Number one, since Justice brought up turning the other cheek, and you, I guess, elaborated on the hidden homoerotic connotations behind that. If you get Michael Eric Dyson's book, I May Not Get There With You, it is a biography on Martin Luther King Jr. He has in the book, this is from Dyson, he has in the book that white people, racist white supremacists at the FBI, had audio recordings of King engaging in homosexual activity. That's in Michael Eric Dyson's I May Not Get There With You. Not commenting on whether it's true or not, but it is in the book in black and white. You can check it out for yourself. Number two, with regards to Genie's excellent commentary on the March on Washington, there were black people alive at that time when the march went down, August 28, 1963, who had the exact same opinion of what was happening at the march. One of the best that I've read, and I think it's important just paying attention to the words, the author of the piece, black male, he was in SNCC, his name is Michael Thelwell, and that's T-H-E-L-W-E-L-L, Michael Thelwell, and the name of the essay that he wrote, and it is fantastic, 2 thumbs way, way up. The name of the piece is The August 28th March on Washington, The Castrated Giant. That's the title of the essay, The August 28th March on Washington, The Castrated Giant. it sounds exactly like what Genie just shared with us. And the last piece, if you just want more to back up what Genie just talked about in terms of white people manipulating, controlling every aspect of what happened at that march, you can just get the newspaper. Get the July 4th Washington Post. There is an article that outlines, it almost says exactly what Genie said in the July 4th Washington Post, where they basically say that white people brought in their hand-picked black people to organize, put funding behind this, and control what happens because white people were very nervous that rowdy black people were going to come to Washington, D.C. and cause a problem. July 4th, Washington Post. Check it out. You can read it for yourself. Justice, if you have some questions, please go right ahead.
What you were talking about Martin Luther King is different from what I've learned about Martin Luther King. Could you please give me some clarity about what you were talking about?
Yes. People in the black community are taught that Martin Luther King is a hero. Martin Luther King is not a hero. Martin Luther King is not a hero for black people. Martin Luther King would best be described as a race traitor. That would be the best description to give him. He was not the same level of a race traitor as some individuals because he did try to do some positive things for black people. But if we were to classify his behavior, he would best be described as someone who fought against the interests of his own race. The reason that whites teach him, like you've learned these things about Martin Luther King, and he's being taught and professed as a good individual, is because whites want you, little Justice, and our other brothers and sisters, as you were being raised, to think that it is good to allow whites to abuse us. And Martin Luther King, by his own words, when you listen to his speeches, teach that our ultimate goals are to be loved and be integrated with whites, who are the individuals that are killing us. So he teaches us to love those that kill us and turn the other cheek, to allow them to beat us and not fight back, but to allow them to beat us the second time after they've beaten us the first time. As such, because they want us to continue to allow them to brutalize us, as opposed to teaching us about the true heroes, the people like Harriet Tubman, Nat Turner, Robert F. Williams and Mabel Williams, Kwame Ture, Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, and various individuals, many of the names we don't know, John Jack Dessalines, Book Mondetti, people, Ida B. Wells Barnett. Instead of magnifying these people who did things that if we emulated those people, we would get closer to ending racism and white supremacy, they give us people who did the exact wrong things. And if we emulate these individuals, we will continue to remain enslaved and eventually have genocide committed against us. So in the 1960s, the individual that they made and paid money to confuse our people that they should love white folks instead of loving our own selves and hating our enemies, they created Martin Luther King. In 2005, they give you, or 1985, they give you NWA, who tells you that you are N-word and you should kill other black people and don't talk about killing white folks. They give you Oprah Winfrey and make Oprah Winfrey this big person that gets a lot of money and we can watch her on TV, and essentially she says we should hate one another, we should be involved in homosexuality and lesbianism, and black men are no good. And we should love white folks, and we should hate one another. They constantly pay black people to misinform and misguide us. And then they use their media to teach us that these people are good people. And then we emulate them trying to be good people, and we become self-destructive. That is Martin Luther King, a self-destructive Negro who loved his enemies more than he loved himself. And when he began to try to start developing love for himself, the whites felt that he was going to betray them, then they killed him. And now they make him a hero, teaching us to love white folks because Martin Luther King loved white folks.
What is the Black Panther Party?
You say, what was the Black Panther Party?
Yes.
Okay. Robert F. Williams, and I'm going to bleed right into this, Robert F. Williams and his wife, Mabel Williams, eventually, when the Freedom Riders came down there and the black people began to try to help the Freedom Riders, it blew into a full-scale race riot in Monroe, North Carolina. Black people from all around the country were sending money and calling up and saying, how many men should we bring down to Monroe, North Carolina? We heard it's a race riot. And so black people started driving down to Monroe with guns, and whites began to drive into Monroe with guns as well. And everything began to escalate. And what Robert F. Williams ended up doing, the people came to the house and said, look, Robert F. Williams, they don't want us. They only want you. And the FBI is involved now. They're coming to kill you. So we're going to smuggle you and your wife out of the city and your children. Don't be afraid. You know, we'll be okay. They're looking for you. So they fled to Canada, and then they left Canada and went to Cuba. And when Robert F. Williams and his wife and family got to Cuba, they met with a man named Fidel Castro. And long and short is that Fidel Castro was so impressed by this man, he gave him a .45 to protect himself in Cuba, and he gave him access to a radio station. And so Robert F. Williams and his wife Mabel began to do a radio show called Radio Free Dixie. And in this radio show, what they would basically do, they would broadcast it into America and be basically saying you need to revolt. You need to fight against white supremacy. You need to stand up for yourself and build up your own communities. Don't allow them to brutalize you. It's time for rebellion. So, and then they would play jazz and black music that people wouldn't get to hear anywhere else. And so they began to inspire black revolution and inspire black people to start to resist. And so people would either hear the radio show or they would talk to people who were inspired by the radio show, and black people started talking about we need to organize, we need to fight, we need to resist. And it became the talk of the people in the black community. And so a group of brothers in Los Angeles, one named Huey P. Newton, another one named Bobby Seale, and Huey P. Newton was going to law school in the evenings at the community college and studying law. He was studying law. They were protesting against police brutality and for the rights of black people. And they went to jail, and they got out of jail, and they read this book called Negroes with Guns, which was a story about Robert F. Williams' fight in Monroe, North Carolina, and how he had armed the people to protect themselves against police brutality and Klan violence and white aggression. And so they said, we should start an organization to defend ourselves because the law says that we have the right to carry a gun. We can have guns and the right to self-defense to protect ourselves against police that come around and beat black people up for no reason. So they said, yeah, let's develop an organization. They said, well, what should we call the organization? They said, well, we need a strong name. We need a strong name, something that sounds strong that black people would like. And it's got to be something simple, but it's got to be like an animal that seems fierce and strong. And since we're black, we want to inspire black people to be proud, so it needs to be some animal that's black. And earlier, there was a group under by a man named Stokely Carmichael, who they call Kwame Ture, who had started some voter registration drives in Mississippi and in the South, and they had started a party called the Black Panther Party. And so they said, it was a political party. They said, we're going to use that Black Panther as the name of our organization. We're going to be the Black Panther Party for self-defense. And when people see that Black Panther, they'll say, oh, these are strong. And then the Panther will have, then we'll have guns to protect our people in our community. And so it was a social organization started by black men who did not want black people to get beat up by police and killed by police anymore. And they wanted to protect their community. And it grew into a social organization that would feed black people and protect black people against white supremacy, and in particular police violence in America.
Have any enforcement officials mistreated you more since you have been focusing on working against racism, white supremacy?
I didn't hear the first part of the question. Say it again.
Have any enforcement officials mistreated you more since you have been focusing on working against racism, white supremacy?
No, I do not know that any law enforcement officials who I've had to encounter, I'm not even certain that any of them know what I'm doing. I would say not yet.
I see. Okay, well, those will be all of my questions for right now.
Okay.
Context of white supremacy. I want to make sure I give the year for the article that I gave. It's in the Washington Post. Someone texted that they did not get the year. It's in the Washington Post, July 4th, 1963, and that's, a little bit over a month before the march actually went down. So Washington Post, July 4th, 1963. Go to the library. Okay. I thought it was, like I said before, I think Mr. Fuller is correct that black males and black females are not able to be men and women in the system of white supremacy. But I feel like Robert Williams, real close. Real close. That is like the blueprint that we should be looking at for black masculinity, in my opinion. And I think a lot of that is just because everything that he did was about protecting and defending black people against racism, white supremacy, white aggression. Particularly, I thought this was fantastic. On page 115, he's talking about youth violence. This is nothing new. A lot of the same problems and pathologies that black people have as a result of racism, white supremacy, we've had for a long time. It's just been compounded as this system has lingered. On page 115, Mr. Williams, he writes, "Our children who are growing up without shoes are also growing up with a sense of direction they cannot obtain in the Jim Crow schools. There once was a threat in Monroe of Negro teenage gang war. It abated as teenagers resolved their difficulties by coming to understand the problem. It is only natural to expect the black youth to be infected with a desire to do something. Frustrated by less active adults, this desire may be projected in the wrong direction. The vigor of the youth can be channeled into constructive militant actions. It is simply a matter of common sense to have these young Negroes constructively fight racial injustice rather than fight among themselves." Man, and again, I think that goes right to what you touched on earlier about the Black Panther Party. This easily could have been black people mobilizing, coalescing to do something non-constructive. Instead, they have an understanding of what the problem is. They're looking for resolution, and it goes the exact opposite direction. Let's mobilize to self-defense. Let's do everything we can to resolve the problem of racism, white supremacy. Can you kind of touch on that? And even I would say I think it sheds some light on the misconduct of a lot of young people now because we have a lack of focus, a lack of purpose. And I'm talking about black people specifically, young and old.
Yes, and I'm gonna say in regards to what you're saying, to go into it, the real hideous thing about individuals like Martin Luther King Jr. I really wanna. We have to destroy some of these false icons in our community because they arrest us. The real violence of these Negroes that get paid to strip away the natural masculinity or aggression in a people who are being oppressed, and I'm talking about black people, is that when a people have been treated the way we are, there is a natural resentment for the condition that we are in. All we would have to do to get our people to fight is to give them the truth of the condition that we are in and why we're in this condition from the time they are born. And then they will naturally be compelled to do what our little sister Justice is doing. And I'm not going to lie, brother, I love doing it. I think that's one of, as much as I enjoy your show, it's just doubly magnified by the fact we have a 10-year-old sister who's engaged in serious dialogue. She does not have an opportunity or there's no alternative but for her to grow up and be a productive African queen. So that little sister, it makes me feel good because I know we have a future as a race. How can she have this kind of dialogue and ask these good questions? Because some parent or parents have decided not to lie to their daughter about the world that she lives in, but to be honest with her. Is she going out there shooting anybody? No, I'm sure she's going to school. She has friends. She's getting good grades. She's doing what children do, but she's engaged in proper thinking and the truth. Liars in our community, these Negro Toms that teach our people about Christianity and these false realities that have no bearing on truth, still the natural propensity, particularly of black males, who would see, if we were taught the truth, that we have an enemy who is white that is killing us, and we need to organize to fight them, we would naturally, our youth, would naturally begin to work out. They would begin to learn to shoot, but they wouldn't become all shooting each other. They would see a brotherhood because they would have a common interest in figuring out what they're going to do to fight against whites. And all we would have to do is start them on the right path with the information and some discipline and character. By the time they got 18 or 19 years old, they got the truth from the time they were born. The natural inclination would be for them to fight against the whites. And what is so good about teaching youth the truth is that if you teach them the truth, they don't operate with fear. Children don't have fear like we do. They don't have fear until you implant that in them. So the things that we would never even consider doing to try to end racism and white supremacy, if we gave them the truth from the beginning, that's where they would start thinking. They would start where we end 2 levels past that, they would start there. So we would get freedom or the potential to have freedom or resolution much quicker if we told them the truth. The consequences of lying to our children are that pent-up rage and hatred for the condition that we are in as a race of people becomes fuel for more self-destruction because we have not been pointing out who our enemy is. And hence, since we're around each other 24 hours a day, we take out our rage and frustration on one another. And so the black-on-black violence, rape, murder, gang violence, torture is created and magnified by racism and white supremacy and their cronies and supporters with black skin, like Martin Luther King. When a child listens to Martin Luther King saying we should turn the other cheek and forgive for the violence, then that black child who would otherwise look at what whites did to us and be mad at whites, and then that creates a stronger brotherhood with black people, has no alternative but to take that anger that should be put on whites, and now since it's not on whites, it's been prevented from going against whites, it can only go in the wrong direction because there's no other place for that violence to go that will be useful for our people. And so it's a cancer in our community, the dishonesty and the unwillingness to teach our people that they can have nothing but disdain and hatred for the whites and what they do to us, and to mold that into something that is useful. Instead of us producing Black Panther parties and Black Liberation Armies, we create Bloods and Crips who murder and kill without thought other black people in our community, smoke, drink, drugs, and puts us in the condition that we're in today, or helps keep us in the condition that we're in today.
Wow. Wow.
And let me say this, I want to add this one little piece, because it's important. I'm going to be honest with you. It can be difficult. You know, my mother exposed me to, I didn't grow up with a father day-to-day in the home. So there was a void in my life to that degree. So that accounted for some of what I'm about to say. But the major bulk of it, you know, when I was younger, there were periods where I didn't actually physically want to go out there and kill myself, but I had suicidal thoughts. And it's going to sound strange to people, but like when I was 14 or 15, I can just remember because I had been exposed to For the People and, autobiography of Malcolm X, and I heard Nation of Islam. And those things made me excited. But everything else in life, the police, the way they would treat us, the way I would see the drunk people. My mother said that, from the time I was very little, I used to hate black men who were drunk. I used to hate it. And I didn't know what it was, and I thought about it, and I thought back. I said, I know what it was. I always had this idea that we were these great people. I don't know, my mother must have taught me that. And that's probably what I was looking to see. And so when I saw something in black men other than glory and grandeur and strength, it depressed me, and I was angry with them because I wanted them to be, I guess, my vision of what we were supposed to be. At any rate, the weight in my youth of trying to figure out what I was going to do or what could be done about the stuff that was going on, and I didn't even know it as white supremacy. I just knew things were messed up. It was a lot. The only thing that really kept me going was every now and then I would run into something from the Nation of Islam, and it would inspire me, and I would see black people that fought, or I would see a clip about the Black Panther Party, watch Eyes on the Prize, and I'd be like, wow, we can do that again. And so there was some sense of hope because I knew that we had done something yesterday, so the idea that something could happen again existed. That was like a little bit of hope. But other than that, I really didn't see any hope or future on this planet in the condition things were. My point being, this is an unspoken reality that a child doesn't understand what racism and white supremacy well enough to explain to you why they're depressed and have no hope. But this is what is, on a magnified level, is the condition of most of our youth because they've just been lied to from the time they've been born. And so we have got to start doing what you're doing here with this show, or Warner Horizon Radio is trying to do. We've got to begin to bring truth tellers to our people who are not encouraging them to do the damaging things that are destroying our community anymore, but who have said, none of us are going to be perfect. We all got ugly things in our past, but at least we're going to come to the table and say, look, these are the things that are confronting our race. These are where our aggression should be spent. Let's organize and do something about this problem. And we will see overnight, if we give this to our youth, we will see a group of youth who our aggression is no longer turned in on themselves, and they will bring these whites hell.
Context of white supremacy. Are you okay with taking a few calls?
I think it'd be a great idea.
Okie dokie. We give the number out one more time. If you want to call in to listen or ask a question, the number to dial 760-569-7676, and the code is 564943. Also, before I hit the phone lines, this will come up again. I thought it was real interesting because I believe this is a white person who began the book with his critique of Martin Luther King Jr. and saying, actually, one of his lines, he said that he felt that white people were so enamored with Martin Luther King Jr., and this is before he began, talking about Vietnam and such, because his philosophy was racist. A white person coming on the program next week, next Thursday, he wrote a book about the Deacons of Defense. Same thing, another group of black people that got buried. Nobody knows about them. You don't hear anyone talk about them, who got tired of racism, white supremacy, white aggression. They got guns to organize and defend themselves. And white people don't talk about that. You don't hear anything about that. But he said this is total foolishness to speak of nonviolence in a system where white people celebrate violence against black people. So we'll be chatting about this again next week. Person who called in, last four digits, 1954. 1954. Did you have a question?
I wanted to say something, and I wanted to get our brother's opinion on it, if he would give his opinion and analysis. And some great history that the brother's given on the civil rights movement and all of that. I was wondering, what did he think about this? When I hear you, it just seemed to me that whole thing from the civil rights movement against the true black nationalists, it seemed like that thing is still going on today. These Negroes are still trying to convince our people into integration. And another thing I want to say about white supremacy, it just seemed like to me that the black man does seem unwilling to make the ultimate sacrifice of ending white supremacy. It's like we're looking for something outside of ourselves to bring about an end to racism and white supremacy. It's just like when these white devils came over here from Europe and they wanted to break away from the British rule. They said, "Give me liberty or give me death." It seemed like the black man in America haven't reached that point. And in my opinion, I think that once we get to that point, then we'll be ready to do some business. I wanted to get Brother Genie's analysis of that.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that comment, brother, and definitely appreciate the spirit it was brought in, and I think it was excellent commentary. I agree with what you said, but I'm going to take it's just a slight turn on what you're saying, just a slight, but I think it's relevant. And I'm going to I usually don't talk about this, but it might as well be talked about. I mean, we're dealing with this reality. And he goes right to your point. I've been very quiet on this for quite a long time, but, I watched this situation with Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. And I realized that in our race, as a race of people, we have, for thousands of years, had an ongoing conflict. And we keep losing this conflict, the African nationalists. There's a group of people in our race, and I can't put numbers on it, but there's a group of people in our race that have the position that the brother is talking about, which is, let's make the ultimate sacrifice. But I don't think, and this is where I'm making a slight adjustment, the ultimate sacrifice for black people is not to give our lives, because we get killed every damn day. Giving a life for black people, we all die anyway. That's not really a sacrifice. The sacrifice we got to make is to be willing to take white life. Despite justice or rightness or wrong, that's the thing. It's got to be so perfect before a black person can do it, they got to be able to justify it. We got to not think like that. We got to say, if they got white skin, they got a black problem. And we got to, that's our resolution. We got to say, this is a race that essentially if they stay on this planet, we die. So we have to make a decision. And the ultimate sacrifice is not for our lives, it's for theirs. We will give our lives. We don't want to take no lives, though. And this thing is not about giving lives, it's about taking. And I watch with the Million Man March. I bring this up because it is very relevant. Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad represented, if you listen to the things he was saying, he represented that spirit of African people that actually is most effective in dealing with white aggression. A spirit that is not necessarily the carnal core nature of our people to be violent, but a spirit that says, okay, when we decide that we have a mortal enemy and that we're pushed in a corner, we will be as violent, but better yet, we'll be more violent than them. We'll be as destructive, better yet, we'll be more destructive. We'll be as ruthless, as better yet, we'll be more ruthless than them. We'll be as terrorist, even more terrorist than they are. We will be as dishonest in engagement with them as they are with us, and more dishonest. And we will do anything we can to bring them pain and suffering the way that they try to do to us, but we'll do a better job. As a race of people, I've noticed this. Every time we produce people like that, the masses of our people, even though that's not our character, we love these people because we know that that's what we need to survive and move to the next stage. But we always produce these leaders, whether the whites produce them or these a lot of times the whites don't produce them. They just some integrationists like moderate Negroes, or in this case, I don't know how to properly classify it. I do know how to, but I don't want to be too disrespectful because Minister Farrakhan has a number of followers. in great respect, and he saved tremendous millions of our people's lives who have heard him. But I got to honestly say, he's talking crazy talk. Integration is Negro talk. He's marrying peckerwoods, letting them into the nation. He's talking the exact opposite stuff that what Dr. Collar was talking. And what made us love those of us who are fierce or that are fighters or that want to fight, what made us love Mr. Farrakhan to begin with, he was talking just like Dr. Collar. Or at least we thought he was. We thought he was saying we got to fight with these cracks and bring them pain. And this is the real challenge, in my opinion, that goes to what the brother's saying. The real challenge for African people is that we're going to have to make the decision, even though it's going to hurt us, that our brothers and sisters, who are our brothers and sisters, who have the opinion that there's any other resolution than dealing with whites in a very physical way, that we're going to shut them down, whatever it means. And we're not doing it because we hate them, because we don't hate them. We love them. These are our mothers, our parents, and our sisters and brothers, but they've cost us everything. I mean, it ain't, I'm not even blaming them, to be honest with you. I'm not blaming them. I'm not blaming these people. That's our core nature of our people is a good people. But really, that ain't really relevant these days. You know, your goodness and your kindness, if it means that more crackers are going to live, and if it means that black people who are fierce and were willing to do anything to these crackers to get something resolved are going to die broken hearts because they didn't get to do what they intended to do, or you're going to make it more difficult for them and for us to get what we need to get done, you know, it's a tremendous sacrifice. We ought to say, look, whatever it takes to shut you up and make you not relevant, we're really going to have to do that because we really don't have time to be engaging Negroes no more. We don't have no time for Negroes to get a platform to attach to the nature of our people, to convince our people that we don't have to fight with these goddamn crackers. We don't really have no room if you're looking at warfare. Excuse my language. I know the sisters on the line. You know, this is racial warfare. And if we're going to win, we got to really indoctrinate our youth with a pure, unadulterated hatred and apathy for Europeans, such that just like a roach, if you see a roach, you don't go, oh, my God, is that a female roach? Is she pregnant? You just smash it and try to get rid of it and try to look to see if there's any more. And if you think that there's more of them, you call an exterminator to get rid of all of them. And what I'm saying is, if we're going to survive, and if there's going to be a future for our race, until we've gotten revolution, we're going to have to really become slightly tyrannical as a race of people, even with what people can say. I know it don't sound right, and I know we believe in this freedom of speech stuff, but honestly, we cannot move forward with a bunch of voices running around there contradictory to those voices that say this is racial warfare and whites are the enemy and we have to fight with them and we have to destroy their power, which ultimately means them.
Person who called in, from a blocked number with a hand up. Did you have a question for the Irritated Genie?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, Gus. Thanks again. And to Justice, good evening to you both and to the Irritated Genie.
How you doing, sister?
I'm doing great, brother, and I'm so glad that you're on. I was looking forward to this show the whole week when I saw that you were on the list of guests to appear on Gus's show. And I do agree with you. I do listen to your rebroadcast on the War in the Horizon network, and I was listening to your broadcast with Gus Zulu last night, and I had to crack up on some of the things that were said by the brother, especially the one that came on and was justifying the N-word and was trying to go back to the Kabbalah and all of this nonsense with that. So that's for another discussion. But I got into, as you said, I don't like arguing with black people when it comes to this thing with pedophilia and the sex thing. And I got into it today with a young lady because I'm firmly against the homosexual tendency, and I don't like it in the military. I'm a retired military person, and I was saying I did not think it was conducive. And she came right behind me, and she was stating, well, she was for it, and she doesn't see there's a problem with it, and these people with the discrimination and a whole lot of nonsense that she was coming along with. And the last part of her conversation was that she was a product of a biracial relationship. So my thing went off, and I said, you know what, every time I get into an argument about homosexual activity, it always happens to someone who is involved in an interracial relationship or someone who is a product of an interracial relationship. When I say that, I mean from a black-white situation. And it seems that they're always trying to bring race into it and miscegenation. I'm saying, well, look, if you're so involved with it and you so like it, I said if it was not for a man-woman relationship, you wouldn't be here arguing with me, trying to tell me I need to change my position and I'm not going to change it. So I would like to get your take on that.
I'm going to say, that's very interesting that you picked it out. I never really get to talk about this, but you make an excellent point. Let me add something to what she's saying, and I would completely agree with my sister. I would say the vast majority of the time, I can't put a number on it, but a product of a so-called interracial relationship between a black person and white, that individual is going to be an enemy to black people. I'm going to make it simple. I ain't even going to get complex. They're going to be an enemy to black people, which means they'll be pro-white sex, they'll be pro-integration, integrated relationship, which is against our people. They'll be pro-white in some kind of way and anti that which is in the best interest of black people. By their very nature, the fact that they're mixed and integration helps whites control us, their very existence is in contradiction to our black love, black man, black woman environment. So the mulatto is a historical enemy to African people, even though they're individual instances of decent mulattoes who actually just are black people who happen to unfortunately have a white parent. There are individuals who exist like that, but for the most part, they're enemies to our people. I'm going to say, in addition to noticing that mulattoes are pro-white sex and their sexual deviance, whites are going to be pro-sexual deviance for the most part. Mulattoes, individuals who are participating in this misbehavior, Christians in the black community, or individuals in our community who have someone close to them who participating in this misbehavior. And so what's happening is we got a group, and that's a huge thing because there's a substantial population of people who are not engaged in white sex, but whose brother, mother, daughter, or somebody like that is engaged in white sex. And if you start talking about disagreeing with the behavior, like our sister said, they're going to argue with you because their mama or their sister or somebody else is involved in it. The mulatto, I wouldn't even argue with the mulatto because that's not really a member of the race as far as our definition of what the race is. It war on the horizon. They're not a member of the race. We expect them to be against African people because that's what they do. A white sex offender, if somebody's involved in this misbehavior, the chances of them disagreeing with it are going to be little to none. So that would be my take on that. Those are four groups of individuals. The white sex, or the whites, those in our community who are involved in white sex misbehavior, those in our community who have individuals that are close to them, who they maintain close relationships with, who are involved in it. We call them promosexuals because they promote this madness even though they might not be involved in it. I got that from Brother Mulimu Baruti. And then you have the mulatto, who is a traditional enemy to African people and generally takes a position against anything that's in the interest of black progress and black unification.
Person who called in, from a block number, different person from a block number. Did you have a question? Different person with a block number? Whoa,
can I be heard?
Give me some back. Yes.
I apologize. Greetings, Irritated Genie.
How you doing, my sister?
I'm well. This is 818. I just wanted to thank you so much for the history lesson because I've read both The Secret Relationship, Volume 1 and 2. So I got that the Small Hat was an enemy. I just couldn't for the life of me figure out what their role was in the so-called civil rights movement and the motivation because I knew there had to be one. I just couldn't figure it out. So I wanted to thank you for that. Also wanted to ask you, was Bayard, if you know, are these things true, was Bayard Rustin the same male who was close to Martin Luther King who was later accused of raping his daughter? And is it also true that before Martin Luther King met Coretta Scott King, he was dating or wanting to marry a white female?
Okay. The first question, I do not know if Bayard Rustin raped his own father. I'm not familiar with that or not. But I do know this. I do not know. I wasn't in the room, but I do know that when Martin Luther King and Bayard Rustin went around the country, they would stay in the same room together. That is a fact. I cannot say that anything happened. I'm not saying that. I mean, you can go around the country and maybe they can only afford to pay for one room and you go there. I'm not saying something happened, but I'm saying I wouldn't be in a room with no fag, so I don't know. And I also know that, what is our brother, Adam Clayton Powell in New York made the statement that when Martin Luther King and Barrett Rustin were talking about boycotting the Democratic Convention, Adam Clayton Powell called him up in Brazil and said, look, I'm going to tell everybody about your homosexual affair with Barrett Rustin if you don't call this boycott off. And that's when, for a very brief moment in time, Martin Luther King began to distance himself from Barrett Rustin. I'm not saying that it was actually a homosexual relationship because it could have been a threat. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I will say when somebody makes a threat like that, it does make you think and consider something. So I don't know the answer to that question, your first question, but I thought that was relevant information. To your second question, her name was Rosen. I think it was Hillary Rosen, if I'm not mistaken. I can't, wait, you know what? I don't think that's her name. I forget her name. She was a small hat, though. He was in college, and he wanted to marry a small hat. His father, Martin Luther King Jr., his father told him, first of all, his father made him go to Morehouse. He didn't want to go to a black school. His father made him go to a black school because that was his alma mater. When he graduated, he said, I am going to a white school. There wasn't no two ways about it. Martin Luther King was like, I am going to a white school for graduate school. He liked white females. And so he got a big thing out of sleeping with the football players' girlfriends, their white girlfriends. He got a big thing out of that. So he had a lot of them, and he fell in love with one of them, a small hat, and he wanted to marry her. But his father was like, that absolutely positively is not going to happen. And don't take this wrong. I'm not making a judgment about complexion. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying, I'm just talking about the psychology of the man that we're talking about. When he wasn't able to do that, then the next thing he did was find high society, very light-skinned, who Coretta King, if you talk to people who talk about her history, who operated with that white supremacist mentality. I'm not just talking about her physical complexion. I'm talking about her behavior. He went and got something the closest to that in terms of complexion that he could find in that sense. So I'm not saying he didn't love the woman. I'm just saying, yes, that is true. He did have a thing for white females, and he had something that many black men suffer from, that idea that white is right. If I can't get something white which he wanted to marry, then I want the closest thing to white that I can get. That is, all of that is true.
Let's see. Person who called in, last four digits, 5301. 5301, did you have a question?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
This is Dot from Brooklyn. Good evening, Brother Genie. Thank you for sharing some constructive information with us tonight. I always enjoy listening to you. And I'm ever supportive in your efforts for War on the Horizon, so keep doing what you're doing.
Yes,
that being said, I'd like to know, how would you suggest one respond to me being a black heterosexual male? I'm a strong advocate for black-on-black love. And whenever I talk about black-on-black relationships in a positive manner, I notice that I find individuals who are participating in interracial relationships or same-gender relationships, they seem to be very vicious in their desire to attack me. And the other degenerate black individuals or non-white individuals who are practicing promiscuous behavior, they obviously won't come to the defense on black relationships. So what do you think is a constructive way in which I can deal with these individuals without catching a case?
Yes, sir. I understand what you're saying. Well, let me just tell you, some of the things that I try to do when I'm having these things. A lot of the psychology of our people is predictable. My suggestion to you, you have to sit down, before you even go to these events, you know the psychology of your people. In other words, we know the psychology of our people, that our men are taught that dark-skinned black women are bad and that light-skinned black women are good. And we know that light-skinned black people get a bad rap because for those who get in the movement, all of a sudden you love black. Now all of a sudden because somebody has light skin, now they're supposed to be some kind of less black. So once you get into the movement, then it starts to try to reverse. It's like we got all of these issues. We know that most of us have been involved in, all kind of promiscuous kind of sexual relationships. I know I have. I mean, I've been involved in, I ain't been involved in no white sex per se, but I mean, just not the appropriate type of relationships that we should be involved in. So understanding the psychology of your people, you need to structure the beginning of your discussions such that you trap the homosexual, so that you trap the integrated relationship person, and so that you galvanize support from the black people in there who would otherwise, without all the pain that they've come up with, they would be on your team. So in other words, you go into a room and it's going to be 40 people or 20 people. 5 of them are homosexuals. The way you structure your advertising for it and the way you start it should handicap them off the top. So if you started by saying, listen, I want to be very clear. I believe the most constructive relationship is between a black man and a black woman. And as much as we want to hear everybody's opinion, if you are adamantly against the only acceptable relationship being a black man and a black woman, if there's no possibility that you don't want to hear anything to that, then I think that this is not the forum for you, because I'm not interested in debating whether or not black men and women should be together. What I want to do is figure out how we can have better relationships. So now you've handicapped the homo a little bit, because you basically essentially said, we're not even going to debate what you're talking about, and if you do, then I'm going to have to ask you to go out because it's not constructive for what we're doing. Then you're talking about, this is just examples, the person with the psychology, the brother or sister that's been out there sleeping with everybody, and so you say, hey, look, I know that we've all been involved in, we've been exposed to things in this community, but the reality of it is this. If we're going to have positive, constructive relationships, at some point in time, all of us really would like somebody that we can rely on, that we can trust. And we've had our hearts broken and stuff, and we've taken different avenues. But, those relationships between our grandparents and people that we've seen in the past, they weren't, if they weren't running with all these different people coming to the house, they were stable environments. They really helped us grow up, and it was a good example for us. We really should consider that it would be good and healthy if we start creating those type of relationships so that our children can have the same thing. So I'm not going to sit here and beat nobody up about what you're out there doing per se, but the objective here is to try to talk about how we can start doing better. Because then what happens is the person that's out there, like you're saying, and all this promiscuous stuff, they hear basically what you're saying is, you know you're wrong, I know you're wrong, but I'm not coming here to be your judge, but I am coming here to talk about, okay, what can we do this better? So you take away the sense of defensiveness from them. They might be able to listen. The homo and the integrationists, I'll be honest with you, I would go ahead and surrender them to not coming back no more, because they'll never be in support of what you're believing in. Unless they stop participating in homosexuality, and the mulatto will never support you because they're born incorrectly. They have a birth defect that you can't fix.
7012. Did you have a question for Irritated Genie?
No, Brother Gus, I didn't have a question. Thank you for the forum, and thank you, Justice, and Brother Genie. Appreciate the information.
Thank you, brother.
Sure. Person who called in 7908. 7908. Did you have a question?
No, sir. Enjoying the program. Thank you, Gus. Thank you, Genie. Thank you, Justice. Keep doing what you're doing, brother.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. 8247. 8247. Did you have a question? Person at 8247. Last 4 digits. 8247. Did you have a question? Okay. And person who called in at 5845. 5845. Did you have a question?
Oh, yes. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Greetings, Brother Gus, and Hotep, Brother Genie. I have a comment. I got a quick comment, and I have a question. Well, my comment is that I agree with everything you just said. You said tonight, and you brought forth some powerful information, about the Martin Luther King and the brother Robert F. Williams. I know nothing about that, so I'm gonna look into that. I gotta agree with what you said about the mulattoes. I was just speaking with a mulatto woman, and we got into a debate about what black nationalism is, and so she was defending homosexuality, but her school of thought is kinetic science, and she was defending homosexuality and says it's okay to sleep with whoever you want to sleep with, and we should just all get along and love everybody, and we got on the topic about children, about educating children. I was talking about educating black children. She was just talking about educating all children. So I agree with you on that, man. That's very true. My question is, do you have any information on Martin Luther King's meetings with Elijah Muhammad? I recently saw pictures with him meeting with Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X. Was that just before his assassination? I mean, was that the time where he was making that paradigm shift? You have any information on that? Was that around the same time as
yes.
Before his assassination?
Yes, I'm aware of a couple things, but I'm just like you. I would love to know the full context of what they talked about. I do not know anything in that sense, but I have some friends in the Nation of Islam and have had some for decades now. And some of them have had some really good information. And one thing that they have shared with me is that, and I was able to find out what time frame that was. It was during his paradigm shift. And he was meeting with the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad as a student, not as an equal. I just want to be clear about that. He wasn't meeting on the grounds, I'm trying to convince you of anything. He was meeting because as a Christian Negro who had always believed in white authority and whites are God and believed in the worship of whites, he was beginning to listen to this black power thing and have some self-respect and some own identity. And so he went to a man who had showed him how to build something for yourself where your people can be cleaned up and operating decent. And he sat down as a student to listen to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That is as much as I'm privy to. I don't know exactly what was said or the context of what they discussed.
We're at the 2-hour mark. I just want to make sure I'm being respectful of your time. Someone emailed a question in. If you have to go, I totally understand. It's all good. If you have time for the question, that's fine too. How are things for you?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you, brother. I'm enjoying this with the little sister Justice. It's a Friday night. The brothers and sisters are coming and giving their opinions. I'm moving so good. I'm not even looking at a clock, brother. We can go into the sunrise.
Okay. The gentleman sent his question. He said, can you speak a little about the many countries and heads of state around the world who used Robert F. Williams' concepts and tactics in their triumphs against whites, in particular Mao Zedong?
Yes, this is where it gets really interesting. This is how phenomenal this man Robert F. Williams was. Not only did he go to Cuba, and remember, this is during the time where Cuba was fighting for their independence and was trying to ward off, you remember the Bay of Pigs under John F. Kennedy, where the U.S. government was going in and trying to destroy Cuba, which most people don't know. The army of Cuba is made up of black people. When you see Cuba, you see Fidel Castro, very light-complected Cuban. But the racial makeup of Cuba in terms of his army is black, the predominance of them. So I'm saying that to say that Cuba has a substantial black population. Even when we look at the UNIA chapters, there were 52 UNIA chapters under Marcus Garvey in Cuba. So it had a very strong nationalistic sense of the African people in Cuba. Excuse me. I say that to say Robert F. Williams was meeting with Fidel Castro and Fidel Castro and what's the other? Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Fidel Castro right hand.
Che Guevara.
Che Guevara, yeah, he was good friends with them, and he was sending propaganda into the United States, creating the kind of environment that made it better for Cuba because he had black people in America giving the U.S. government more problems, which gave them less time to focus on Cuba. And also, the Africans in Cuba, and I learned this from some of the brothers in the Nation of Islam who shared this information with me, but people don't realize that there was a tremendous industry in sharing fishing, trade going on between the Africans in Cuba and the brothers and sisters in the South in America. So there was a strong unification, much of those ties being created by Robert F. Williams. He got to the point where he realized Fidel Castro, he was such an asset to Cuba in helping them gain favor around the world against the U.S. government. Fidel Castro, as much as he had them there under good auspices of being protected from the United States government that was had him as the number one person on the FBI list, he was almost a prisoner, him and his wife. He started realizing they don't want me to leave because he was just too much of a valuable asset. And he wasn't really interested in being a prisoner there. He wasn't in prison, but I'm saying he didn't want to be stuck there. So he talked Fidel Castro into letting him go under the auspices that it was just a short trip. Fidel never thought that he would go for good to meet with Ho Chi Minh, and he took his family there. And Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam. This was during the Vietnam War. I want brothers and sisters to go watch the movie Dead Presidents. If you've seen the movie Dead Presidents, or if you haven't seen it and you watched that movie, it's about a brother who goes to Vietnam. The part I want you to watch and remember very well, it's the part where they're in Vietnam, the brothers with the white boys, and they're out there shooting and killing Vietnamese. And one of the white boys gets killed. One of the Peckerwoods get murdered. And when the group rolls up on the Peckerwood, there's a pamphlet. And it said, "Black man, go home. This is not your war." And essentially what had happened was the Vietnamese had one style of fighting the Europeans, but Robert F. Williams got there and said, "You've got to say," when he met with Ho Chi Minh, he said, "Look," he started telling them about New York and Harlem and all the fights and the way that they would fight with crackers in America. And he started teaching the Vietnamese, y'all got to stop being so fair with these crackers. You got to come at them in all kind of different type of ways. You got to bum rush them sometimes. Oh, I said, man, I keep doing it. Brother Gus been working on me. I'm working on my language. We working on other people with the N-word. He working on me with the word fair. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. They were being too nice and benevolent to the Europeans. And so Robert F. Williams said, no. You got to do this thing. It's not all about just a physical warfare. You have to go after psychological warfare of the black soldiers who, he explained to them, back home they're raping their women. He said right now, while they're out there fighting against you, who are not their enemy, the whites are back in the air-conditioned units having a good time, letting them do all the fighting, climbing into the holes, trying to go down there and kill you. They call them, not rats, moles. I think they call the brothers moles, the little short brothers. They would climb down in these holes and climb all the way down and go down there and have to stab or fight somebody to death in a little hole and then come back. And so he said, put these pamphlets out here to remind the black soldiers of who their real enemy is. And what will happen is they will, by virtue of seeing the whites treat them in a racist manner, now you've shown it to them when they see this pamphlet, they'll start to become psychologically distressed. And when that happens, they will not be good warriors for the whites. Many of them will turn and start killing their white counterparts, and that's exactly what started happening. The black soldiers, actually, most people don't know this. It got so, there's a lot of stories that we don't know. It got so intricate that some of the black soldiers, they had a whole area in Vietnam where, unfortunately, it was drugs, but the black soldiers would go and do drugs and meet with the Vietnamese, share information with them, in exchange for stuff with the Vietnamese. It was like they had realized these whiteys were not their friends, and they had made allies with the Vietnamese. Some of them stayed over there and never came home. Even deeper than that, though, there were certain units. I actually heard Brother C. Miles had a show. And a brother called in one day. I thought it was one of the most informative and interesting stories I'd ever heard. A brother said he was in the military over there in Vietnam. He said, and eventually they started to get to meeting the Vietnamese, and they started realizing these were cool people, and they didn't want to fight with him. So what they would do, he said that they would only tell certain brothers. He said you had to be a real trustworthy type of brother that didn't like crackers, and that it just was a trustworthy type of real brother. And they would meet with the Vietnamese and sit down and talk with them, and they said, okay, this is how they would do it. The Vietnamese would give them a certain cloth, and it had shimmy on it, a certain shine on it. And he said, basically, the white boys would always send them out first, and then after they had gone out and made sure things were okay, then the white boys would come behind them in the second row and shoot. He said, so they would go into battle with the Vietnamese, and if they were up front, they would shimmy the little cloth, so the Vietnamese would know not to shoot. And when they stopped shimmying the cloth, that meant that it was time to shoot, because the white boys were now making their advance, and the Vietnamese would mow down the white boys and kill the whole unit. Then the brothers would get over there and go meet with them and talk to them and do whatever they would do with them. And then they'd go back to the unit. Oh, man, we lost this many casualties, whatever the case may be. So they had an actual functional working relationship with them. Who is it that gave the Vietnamese the idea that they could align themselves with many of the black men who were being mistreated in this group? Who was it that even gave them that consciousness? Robert F. Williams. He then left there, left Vietnam, and these are just some of his travels. He went to places like Tanzania. He went to, he actually had black people in Africa doing protests at their embassies against the Vietnam War. He began to organize all around the world. What people don't know is that the United States government, again, we hear this Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was not important to them. They had him under full control until the end of his life. They were making Martin Luther King important. He was a nobody. The man they were they had all their resources trying to capture Robert F. Williams all around the world, but he was in places they couldn't reach him. They were trying to send people in those places and get him, but he was just too well loved. And he was under the protective cloak of governments who were fighting the U.S. government. He then went and met with a new man, Mao Zedong in China. His was deep. I actually have an original, I don't know where it is right now. I wish I had it so I could read it. I should have pulled that out. I have an original article of the Crusader. I think it's from, I forget what year it's from, 1960-something. Mao Zedong, now I want people to understand this. He's the leader of the largest country in the world. When Robert F. Williams went there, Mao Zedong said, we, the Chinese people, support and give the backing of China to the Negroes in America for their fight for justice and freedom, which we say is a righteous fight against tyranny in the West. I want everybody to listen to that again. Martin Luther King talking about begging and pleading these peckerwoods for some niceness. Robert F. Williams has gone around the world and not only assisted individual nations in successfully defeating the American government, U.S. government in warfare, but he goes to the largest country on the planet and secures the backing of its leader to the degree that he puts in writing China's support for our black liberation struggle in the United States of America. Who is a more important and dangerous figure? Some Negro running around talking about loving some peckerwoods, or a black man who actually solicits the verbal support from the head of the largest nation on the planet. People don't understand what this man did. He put us in a position to be allied. Why do you think the Black Panther Party was able to go to China and get guns? That's where they got their guns. Who secured that relationship? Who secured that exchange of ideas and thoughts? Most people don't know. The Vietnamese, Ho Chi Minh said when they asked him, where did you get the idea for the Tet Offensive? The Tet Offensive was the last major battle in Vietnam. Crackers started scrambling for the sky because the Vietnamese just brought all the entire army and just attacked all at once. And it was just too much, and the whiteys finally had to just flee for their lives. He said, where did you get that? He said, watching the Detroit riots. Ho Chi Minh got his strategy for the 10th offensive. That is one of the most famous battles in the Vietnam War, the most famous battle, I think, from watching the Detroit riots and watching black people in America bring everything we had as this white boy and come with that natural naked aggression, not trying to be friends, just coming with everything that we had. And he said, wow, we can fight a different type of strategy. And this is what, I think it's real interesting because with the brother was asking his relationships, this man was supernatural almost. The amazing thing is that they've been able to erase a man out of history who literally, when you're hearing all the things that we're talking about now, one would have to say, how can I possibly not know about this man if he had this much influence on the things that happen in the world? Europeans have colonized information. That's what Dr. John Henry Clark taught us. And this is true. This man is more important. Are you still there, Gus?
Yes, sir. I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, okay, great. This man is more important to the history of our people than most of the people that we learn about. And to end this part of the conversation, what's really interesting is that after being in China for a brief while and realizing that Mao Zedong's time was coming to an end and new leadership was coming in China, and not really knowing how secure he would be there after Mao Zedong's time, he actually negotiated an agreement with the U.S. government to return to the United States of America with his wife. They were so interested in getting some information about what he had learned about China, and I'm sure he didn't give him anything that would really hurt the Chinese, but his wife just wanted to come home. He wanted to come home. He afforded his fight. He was getting older. They negotiated with the U.S. government to come home. He got a position as an instructor at, I think it was University of Michigan, and lived his life out and passed at a ripe old age. And his wife, Mabel Williams, is still living today. As a matter of fact, I think it would be phenomenal, brother, and I don't think there's any person better to do it, that you do an interview with her, because I believe she's still doing interviews, and she's very coherent, very vibrant woman, and is very happy to talk about the work that she did with her husband in the life and times of Robert F. Williams. It would be a great interview to hear from a woman who can actually attest to all the stuff and actually get the story better than what I'm giving it to you now. And they came back to America, and she's here in America now.
Wow. We will have to. I'm totally down. If I can get some contact information, anybody out there, if you can get any assistance, I will definitely make it happen. She is willing to speak with us. I think that would be extraordinary. Wow. Person who called in, last four digits 0918. 0918. Did you have a question? (0918). Did you have a question, or are you just listening?
Oh, I'm just listening. I'm sorry.
All good. All good. Thank you for letting me know, sir. 4479. Did you have a question, or are you just listening?
Yes, I had a question.
Go right ahead.
Greetings, Gus. Greetings, Irritated Genie.
Greetings, brother.
My question is this. I'm in a situation on my job where I'm surrounded by white people, and I try every day not to react violently to racist comments and the stereotypes that are given to me every day. And I fight hard every day to just keep my sanity. Is there any type of way I can react without just becoming so angry and having this exploding in a situation where I just lose everything that I have?
Yes, one, I would say there absolutely is, because you have to. And I really appreciate your question, brother, because that is something I think that every black man at some point in our life, if we get into this information and learn what's going on, our eyes are open. If you're working for Europeans, which most of us do, you end up with some white folks that want to say filthy stuff to you or just disturb you. And it's heightened by the fact that you're aware of what they're doing to you. But we don't want to lose our jobs because we can't afford to do it. What I would suggest is a couple of things. One, I tell brothers and sisters this all the time. Do not get comfortable with these crackers on the job. Because when you make them comfortable with you and they get comfortable, they're going to be far more likely to make negative comments or say stupid stuff out of their mouth to you. And once they do it once and get away with it, they're not going to stop until you say or do something that makes them stop. If you and at the same time that you do not get overly comfortable with them, it doesn't mean that you're not polite or easy to get along with or overly sensitive. It just means don't give them the impression that if they say something to you that they know that they're being offensive with, that you're going to be comfortable with it and that they're going to just walk away from it and be fine. What I would suggest, a few things that we do that make it harder for them. When they say things that are uncomfortable to us, a lot of times we laugh or we react in a manner that says we're uncomfortable, but we're shying away. My suggestion, what I do, in order not to end up punching one of these devils in the head, is that when they say things that I don't like, I don't laugh, I brace up, I don't grin, I don't skim or anything. And I don't either I don't say anything, which makes them uncomfortable a lot of times, or if it's something that's so far past where they should go, I don't think that's funny. And when you say that, if you don't change your opinion and don't have no long debate about it, usually it begins to stop, because this is generally how it works. You're sitting there, and I heard a brother say that down in Southern University, he went into a store, and there was a Peckerwood who is quote-unquote friends or friendly, I should say, with the black people down at the school. And so they're in a restaurant down there in Southern, in Baton Rouge, and the cracker is in line at the black restaurant with a bunch of black people around them. And said, hey, yeah, I did some research of my family tree, and I found out that, he said, I had there was a black man hanging from it, and all the black people in there started laughing. Yeah, they just started laughing because he was their friend, and they thought that was funny. Now, what I'm saying is, I'm using an example like that where somebody says something like that to you at a job or workplace. My suggestion, you don't want to lose your job. My suggestion is that's when you look at them and say, I don't find that funny. And what they're going to say, oh, no, I didn't mean nothing by it like that. My suggestion, don't brace. Look at them. Don't say nothing else. No, but I didn't mean to offend you, and then let them talk. Don't say nothing. And then they'll say, well, look, man, you can't listen, I didn't find it funny. Don't tell me no more jokes like that. And then what they're going to start doing now, they want to try to make you the bad guy. No, but see, I'm not racist. People like you, don't get no debate with them. And then what you do is don't make them comfortable for having said and give no forgiveness or nothing like that. You just keep doing your job. Don't bring it back up. And every time they bring it back up, say, look, you're the one that's bringing the thing up. Okay, I'm over it. But don't say enough like that to me. That's all I'm saying. And then don't make them comfortable, and usually that kind of stuff stops. That would be my suggestion. If you're dealing with rednecks, that generally doesn't work. I'm going to give you another thing. This is very dangerous, and I don't want you to do anything to lose your job, brother, but the fact that you calling and asking it sounds like, to me, you're at a certain level. I'll give you another example. Like with the firemen and individuals like that, it's like a redneck, a blue-collar type of work. You get some of these real rednecks that say stuff like that every day trying to poke at you. What I have seen brothers do and what I have done in situations on my own, when it's a cracker like that, I wait till nobody's around. Maybe we're in the parking lot or something like that. There's no witnesses or anything. And I just roll up on the cracker straight up. I say, look, I didn't find what you said funny. Most times they're going to get scared. Most of them, male to male, direct confrontation like that, they don't like it like that. They like some kind of different thing. You don't have to put your hands on them. You don't have to threaten them anything. Just the fact that you step to him straight, look him in his face where there's nobody around, and he sees that you're not happy, and you let him know how you feel about it, usually will get the job done. And if he brings up something in the job or something like that, say, no, then that's when you turn on that same thing that he turns on, that like he don't know what he's doing. No, we happen to be going out there, and I just said, hey, I didn't think that was funny. And that was it. I wasn't trying to threaten the guy. No, not at all. You know exactly what you're doing when you step up on him like that. But you want to do something that prevents you from losing your job. At the same time, you let the cracker know he got to stop because the threat of it, if you don't do it, eventually you're going to snap. And that's what you don't want to do because you're going to be the one that loses at the end. So those are like, that's my 2 cents on, how to deal with these crackers on the job that come out their mouth with the wrong kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. I agree with everything he shared. My 1 cent would be if they make a joke like that, if it's on a job situation, same thing he said, calm, don't flip out, don't smile, don't laugh, look them dead in the eye. That sounds like something a white supremacist would say. You can either leave it right there, or you can say that and then, are you a white supremacist? And just see what they say. It's been my experience when you just say that with a white person, they back off. We're in the refinement stage. Most white people, they do not want that label. Oh, nope, I'm not a racist. I don't believe in racism. They will start backpedaling quick. That's been my experience. But, I'm not telling you what to do on the job. Think about it and try and come up with your own strategies. But I have found that that one can work as well sometimes.
And I like that strategy. I want to endorse that as well. I think that is a very excellent strategy as well.
Let's see. Person who called in 3413. Did you have a question?
Listening.
I'm sorry?
Just listening. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Great. Okay. I had 2 quick questions, and I want to check with Justice as well. I highly encourage folks, I hope you have found the information about Mr. Robert Franklin Williams. I hope you have found it constructive, and I hope this is sounding like a blueprint for black masculinity. We talk about that a lot on the program and struggling, trying to get on that road to being a man, being a woman. Man, Robert Franklin Williams, excellent direction to head if you want an example of what black manhood should look like under conditions dominated by white supremacy. And again, they have a documentary that you can watch with great information. His wife is in the documentary. He's in the documentary. It's fantastic. However, it is no substitute for reading the book. It has incredible information. And he wrote, this is his autobiography. So, you get to hear it from his own pen. I gained a whole new respect. I had seen the documentary before more than once, but just reading the book, and it had so much other information that I found just fantastic. One of the things that jumped out at me, Genie has already mentioned he had his own newsletter where he was trying to get information out to black people to help in the fight against racism, white supremacy. This is from page 64. Excuse me, page 66. I had the wrong page number. Page 66, and I don't have the new version. I have the old version of the book. So the old version, page 66. And you all know the attention that I pay to words and being accurate about what you say. This leaped off the page when I read it, and I just wanted to get Genie's thoughts on this. He says, as a result of the trial, I was more convinced than ever that one of our greatest and most immediate needs was better communication within the race. The real Afro-American struggle was merely a disjointed network of pockets of resistance, and the shameful thing about it was that Negroes were relying upon the white man's inaccurate reports as their sources of information about these isolated struggles. I think I have said repeatedly on this program, black people have extraordinary communication deficiencies, and I think I said to Genie earlier this week, I think we really are still suffering from the legacy of a group of people where it was punishable by death to learn to read, and I think we have really not appreciated you talk about crippling a people, and that Robert Williams had that understanding, I found profound. Do you have any thoughts on that, Gene?
It was so profoundly stated that this will be my thought on that. For brothers and sisters out there who are listening, what we have decided at War on the Horizon, and I want to remind people, we are working to get it perfected. Brother Gus, of course, has got to be the shining star of War on the Horizon Radio now. He's the first one to really get the shows perfected. But what we're going to do on the last Saturday of every month, starting with the first show, which will be Saturday, October, is that 30th? Or 31st?
30th.
October 30th, which is not this Saturday, not tomorrow, but next Saturday, we're going to have what we call the round table. And basically what that is all the guests or all the ones that can make the particular show that night on Saturdays from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to dialogue about topics that are affecting African community, whatever is the most pressing thing that we think that we should bring to our people that month. And this Saturday, October 30th, our topic is going to be redefining a movement. And it's going to be about what is black nationalism, what is the black freedom struggle or the black nationalist struggle or the black progressive struggle, what resolution or conclusion are we looking for, what does it mean to be black, who is a black nationalist, what does that behavior entail to say that this is what I am, what we're going to do what the brother's talking about, so that from now on, when we're talking and dialoguing, we're beginning to develop a language that is consistent, that we can all use, so that there's a level of respect and, more importantly, understanding amongst us as we move forward. One of the things that I really appreciate about this show, a lot of people, when they come on, cannot be heard. Now, I don't know who started and how it started. What I do know is it is consistent. And what that is it shows a level of respect for the forum. It says that I'm listening. It doesn't say that I have to agree or disagree with things, agree with everything. People may disagree. And if you call them and disagree with me, I'm not going to fight you on that. But what I really respect is that the way the forum is set up, it is set up so that there are standards. Well, the whole race should be set up in such a way that there are standards of acceptable behavior, and there are things that if we do, that we've classified them as being anti-black or un-black. And then we have a definition for them, we have a word for them, and we have certain consequences for those behavior, whether it's we ridicule those that participate in it, or whether we highlight it and say we'd rather not be around someone who's participating in this, or if we just identify it as something that we don't appreciate. Whatever the case may be, we have certain standards for. Like when I say, I'm not going to say it, I'm going to spell it, F-A-I-R. See, I didn't say it that time. Brother Gus, I don't want Brother Gus to jump on me, so I'm going to spell it. But when I use that terminology, the brother corrects me every time. So what does it mean? It means we have a standard. When we're saying, if I'm using the N-word, say, hey, brother, you just said the N-word. I'm sorry, brother, I'm not supposed to be saying that. We have standards of what we do. We correct each other without any sense of feeling less than a man because I'm taking the criticism of bettering myself for what I'm supposed to be doing. When we develop these type of standards, the struggle becomes much easier because we don't mistreat each other. And we understand what each other is talking about because we know we speak the same language. I think it's absolutely critical that you cannot have a real movement without consistent ideas and consistent understanding.
Agreed. 818, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. In you speaking about the brother that went and had assistance from Fidel Castro in Cuba and the brother in China, it made me think of a recent video series that I've seen posted on YouTube where there's a black male who was going on and on about how he starts off with the Chinese, but basically makes it like all Asians aren't our friends. They've been our enemies. They've been inspired by us. They never turn around and show any gratitude. And then he takes and splices in TV shows, blackface TV shows, which I think are actually from Korea or Japan, along with a group of girls in Japan called the I don't know if they're the Bubble Sisters or something, but they're all in blackface, curlers. Really, it's derogatory. But it seemed to me that he was trying to make it as if we should consider all Asian people in the same light that we should consider the racist white supremacists, including the small hat. In watching that, I thought to myself, being that we're in a position where black people have no standing army, where at least us over here, well, I would just say in general, I don't know of a black nation exclusively under the control of black people without white interference. Being that we are not at the point where we can supply our own food and necessities and things like that, I don't feel it's constructive to take a whole group of people on a continent and alienate them as if they are all our enemies when some of those people could be allies. I understand the Chinese attempt at colonization of Africa, and I am not for it. But I wanted to know, do you feel it's more constructive or destructive to be making videos like that about, you know, a whole group of people, a whole group of non-white people on a continent based on this person's perception of China and a few of those shows coming out of Korea and Japan?
Okay, and this is where, again, and I hate to go back and start blaming everybody else because at some point we got to take responsibility in doing our own work. But that, first of all, let me thank you for that question. That is an outstanding question. It's a warfare question. Here's the thing. The transition from black people, from black power movement, where we were actively engaged in warfare, and having constructive relationships with other groups who were also fighting white supremacy. When we were drugged up and doped up, when we were given Richard Pryor and the N-word and this comedy and this filth and decadence, the drugs and the over-sexuality, the hip-hop and the self-hatred, we have become a lazy, self-destructive, easy-to-walk-over race of people. Here's the problem with that. What happens is races on this planet are looking out for their own survival and their own interests. That's just the reality of it. So when we are so destructive and backwards that the only thing we are good for is abuse, and we happen to live on the landmass where the greatest land resources exist, and other groups are fighting with white supremacy for legitimacy in the coming centuries, we have two choices. We either galvanize and take control of our own resources and then fight with anybody that gets in our way of that, which we already know is the European, but you don't exactly know what all these other groups will do, because if you're operating from a position of power, you may be able to establish relationships. In our helpless, backwards, Christian, Coonan, Negro position that we are taking now, it is very difficult to take any position on any group of people outside of whites, because essentially we're a stepping stone for everybody. Now, I'm not justifying people stepping on top of my people across this planet because we're down, but I am saying this. When you got hip-hop videos in Kenya and Sierra Leone and places like that, and you got groups who are fighting for our freedom that are getting turned on by Negro turncoats, and we got leaders in America who keep the plights of our people over in these African countries away from us so that we're not able to support Thomas Sankara and those people like that, it puts us in a real precarious position, because what the Chinese is going to do, because the Chinese are not friends to Africans, we have had friendly relationships at times, but they're not our friends. What they're going to do, they're going to go over there and exploit us. I'm not justifying what they're doing, but we have to put ourselves in some kind of position of power so that we can determine what type of relationships we have with people. I do not think that it is constructive to universally classify the Asians as bad. I don't think that. But I also have to realize that in our condition, we really can't trust anybody outside of our own race at this point, because even the Hispanics who are descendants of Native Americans, who traditionally we've had great experiences with, in our Negro position with the brothers in prison having raped and tortured so many Hispanics in prison, that the Hispanics started making organizers saying this is not going to happen anymore, and now they have the strongest gangs. They run the prisons and are taking over this country, and they have some resentment to black people for what we've done to them. Now it's creating a conflict. No, it should not be a conflict, but it has become a conflict due to our condition. You say, well, do you hate Hispanics? No, we don't classify them as enemy, but they're killing our people as well. What we have to do as a race of people, I think the most constructive thing we can do is we can share the information about what the Chinese are doing in Africa, and with the relationship with the Native Americans, who we call Hispanics now, and all these different groups, we begin to organize ourselves and pick something to fight for, a purpose, the face of our movement, which at this point should be white sex. We're fighting against sexual abuse and homosexuality, which will automatically make most of the people around the world take notice of what we're doing politically. Once we take control of some parts of something, then we can start figuring out who we can have some kind of strategic alignment with and who we can't. At this point in time, it's a non-answer more than anything, but at this point in time, we are not in a position to take a position on Asians, Hispanics, Filipinos, or anybody else outside of the white race, because we're not in a position of power even enough to determine if we have friends or not. No one would ally, no one would work with the black race in the condition that we're in today. We call each other the N-word. Any person, there's a brother, was it Ron Daniels? It was one of these brothers from, I think it was Randall Robinson, who was in China. It was either Ron Daniels or Randall Robinson. And he said he was in China. He had a very productive meeting with the Chinese on economics. And he said one of the leaders said to him, that stuff that they put on TV where they put the black stuff on their face and do these comedy things about you all, we think it is horrible what they're doing to the image of black people in America, and we know that you all must be infuriated about it, and as a people, we're infuriated by it. And he said he realized the guy was talking about like Martin Lawrence and all those kind of things that were going on during the late 90s, and he said, he told the Chinese leader, he said, no, those are actually black people doing that. And he said the Chinese leader got up, left, and never spoke to him for the rest of the time he was there. He became so disgusted with him that the people would do that to themselves. He said he didn't speak to him the rest of the time he was there. My point is... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Please continue.
Yeah. He said the guy would not speak. That's how much respect he lost for this man. I'm saying this because it's very relevant to what we're talking about. We cannot be going around calling ourselves the N-word. It makes nobody on the planet can respect a group of people who insult themselves. We cannot be going around presenting ourselves a bunch of buffoons and clowns with our pants hanging off our behinds. We cannot be going around talking about loving the individuals that are murdering and slaying us, because essentially, what is the message that we're giving to others? We have people that want to be slain and abused. If whites have enslaved us and we run around loving white folks, what is the message we giving to the Asians? Go ahead, do the same thing the whites did to us. We love them. We want you to do it to us too. We're giving these messages. I'm not justifying the abuse of our people, but I'm saying our sister has a great point, but the people that are showing that these groups that are exploiting us have a great point too. The problem is that we have not put ourselves in an upstanding position. When we are in an upstanding position, walking upright and straight, they ain't got to be, everybody got to be perfect. I'm just saying, we walking straight, working in our own behalf, then you can take a clear picture. We already got a clear picture that all the whites are enemies. Now we need to know who else are enemies. How do you determine that? Well, first you got to be standing up, walking straight. If you're laying on the ground in front of the door to freedom and progress, a few people will step over top of you and try to help you get up for a while. As long as you lay there, the more likely people are going to get used to stepping over top of you as they walk through the door to progress and freedom. We got to get up and do something for ourselves, and then we can put these things into proper perspective.
Double whammy.
I guess we could call this an outstanding broadcast. I believe Justice had some questions she wanted to ask really quick, and then after that I want to make sure you plug the products that you all have at Warm the Horizon, and I had something I wanted you to comment on to kind of sign us out. But Justice, if you have some questions for the Irritated Genie of Soufeese, please go ahead.
What are some ways for me to help other non-white children to fight against racism, white supremacy?
Excellent question. One of them, I think that you should tell your friends to listen to your show, because when they listen to their show, not only are they getting information that they haven't gotten before, but they're also hearing their friend, Justice, and they realize, wow, she's doing great things, and they become entertained, which we call entertained, by things that are positive for them. So I think that's one way that you would do it. I think that would be very constructive. As they listen to what you're doing, some of them will want to do it. Some of them might have questions that they want to ask, and they become interested in the independence of our people as well, vicariously by listening to one of their friends. 2, I think that when you're doing reports for school or in your interaction with your friends, you should bring up some of this information that you learned and try to share it with them. Because what will happen is you'll be able to share information with them that nobody else has and nobody else will share with them. And as they get older, and I remember when I was very young, I was in 5th grade, I had a friend named Teru Teller. And we were in 5th grade, and I remember I was almost on the verge of trying to beat Teru up. And Teru could fight good, but we were about to fight one day because he came in class and said, Martin Luther King wasn't, he was a Negro. Malcolm X was the real fighter. Martin Luther King, he wasn't no good. And I mean, I never heard anything that revolutionary in my life. Somebody talking about Martin Luther King. I almost wanted to fight this dude. I never forgot that though, because as I got older and began to learn it, it really told me, wow, he was learning this when he was younger, and it influenced me. So there are things that you can teach your friends about what you're learning about being constructive, to have self-respect, and the things that you've learned that can actually influence their life. So that's what I think you can do. Share the information and have them listen to the show while you're on it.
Thank you. I do know that I don't have any more questions, but thank you for being on the cows. It was a pleasure having you today, and have a great night.
You do the same, and know that we love you, little sister. All of us out there listening to what you're doing, you really motivate us and put a smile on our face to see our little sister doing the work. So you keep doing this good work and make your parents proud.
I sure will do that.
All right.
Context of white supremacy. I neglected. I am a victim of white supremacy first and foremost. I forgot to ask. Is Justice going to be a participant in the broadcast next Saturday on the 30th, the roundtable?
Absolutely. I don't know how we could not have one of our youth who's been dedicated to this work. If she's available, she is very welcome to participate, and we look forward to her contribution.
Outstanding. Okay. Since I'm going to let you sign, I'm going to make sure I get the announcement for the next broadcast. We will be back. Actually, I want to thank everybody for listening. I hope you all have not wasted your time. We have posted 5 consecutive shows with well over 100 live listeners. 5 consecutive shows. Hope you all have got great information. We will be back on Tuesday. This will actually be on the War on the Horizon radio network. You can tune in and listen live. Just go to waronthehorizon.com and click their player. It's on the right side of the page. You can listen live. The audio quality is outstanding, and the live stream will not stop. So if the program goes over 2 hours, it's no problem. But we'll be back on Tuesday. That's Tuesday, October 23rd. I told you all I use my Facebook as a weapon. People post a lot of stuff on racism, white supremacy, and I just suck up the information. There's a black couple, male and female. They're married. They are the founders of the Perfect Black Uhuru Academy. It's in Houston, Texas, independent school for black children, teaching them to stand up and attempt to be men and women. The co-founders will be here this Tuesday. Again, the October 23rd, 7 p.m. Eastern.
I think it's October 26th.
Oh, I was looking at the wrong calendar. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Letting me give out incorrect information. October 26th. Thank you. October 26th, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, and 4 p.m. Pacific. Perfect Black Uhuru Academy should be fantastic. I'm actually going to request if we could maybe get 1 or 2 of their students to call in as well. I think that would be cool to hear from them. So tune in. That'll be on the War on the Horizon radio network. I wanted to get your thoughts on this passage. I want to read it. Before you give your thoughts on it, if you could tell us any information about the products that you all have at War on the Horizon, DVDs. I'm eagerly waiting on my DVD to arrive. I saw I got mailed the Black Nationalism versus Black Degeneracy. I cannot wait to get it in my hands to watch the material. But, anything, if you can plug and let us know how we can get more information from the good folks at War on the Horizon, that would be great. But what I would like you to close out with, just as I said, I think Robert Franklin Williams, outstanding illustration of black manhood, and it's in the description. I just want to read it, and you can kind of give your thoughts. I think it would be a great way to end, and I hope it will encourage people to get his book. Check out the documentary, that's great, but you should really get this book, Robert Franklin Williams, Negroes with Guns. He wrote that we came to have an understanding of the racist system, and we grasped the relationship between violence and racism. The existence of violence is at the very heart of a racist system. The African-American militant is a militant because he defends himself, his family, his home, and his dignity. He does not introduce violence into a racist social system. The violence is already there and has always been there. It is precisely this unchallenged violence that allows a racist social system to perpetuate itself. When people say that they are opposed to Negroes resorting to violence, what they really mean is that they are opposed to Negroes defending themselves and challenging the exclusive monopoly of violence practiced by racists. White racists, excuse me. Irritated Genie, floor is yours.
Brothers and sisters, it's a war on the horizon, and it's a war that's been waging for thousands of years. As black people, we have fought whites on numerous occasions. We've won some battles, and we've lost way too many of them. At this point in time, we should not be looking for a battle to win. We are now looking for resolution, which means any discussion about black people in general not using violence is a ridiculous discussion and is racial treason. We are willing, and we have to be ready and willing to use whatever, violent or not, method can bring resolution to the problem of white aggression, which is really white life on this planet. Whatever the resolution involves, we need to get the answer as quickly and efficiently as possible so that we can move on to the next challenge for African people on this planet, the one after the white folks. And in saying that, I'm saying that's exactly what Robert Williams is saying. We do not bring violence to the table. Violence is at the table. Violence is the world that we live in. Violence is the existence of the white race. Our objective is to be the victors in this war against white supremacy. It is a war, and it can be violent, it can be nonviolent, as long as we win when it's over. And any discussions of limiting our options is racial treason, and we should have no more room for it. And with that said, I'd like to say, Brother Gus, you asked me to say some things about what we have available on War on the Horizon on our website. You can go to waronthehorizon.com. When you enter the site, you can go to our store, and we have many different DVDs that cover things from religion. They cover genocide. We talk about Robert F. Williams in our lecture called From Haru to Hero, Race Giants. We have lectures about entertainment and the damage it's doing. We have the Feminization of the Black Male series, parts 1 through 4. We have the Feminism, Lesbianism, the Making of a Black Widow. Essentially, we have, as much as we can, we've tried to deal with all integration, the illusion of inclusion. We try to deal with as many topics that confront black people on a day-to-day basis in the war against white supremacy that can help you make good, practical decisions in your life and can help you help other brothers and sisters who may not see what you're talking about when they talk to you. We give them visual documentation so that they can look at it and see it from another perspective with things they can't argue with. And so what we would say is that we would hope you would support us in the efforts that we're doing, because essentially by educating our people to the fact that there's a war and using various different topics to do it and channeling our energy in the direction of a solution and a resolution to white aggression, the potential exists that we can find it. And so that's what we're trying to do. In closing, I want to let you know that we are also in the process now of not only starting our War on the Horizon radio station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Many of you are listening right now. We're working through to get it to be a full station and everything that goes smoothly. So in the process, we ask that you bear with us. But in addition, we are bringing Brothers Keeper in conjunction with Kimathi Industries. We're bringing them to Washington, D.C., February 20th, 2011. In order to do that, for everybody that's seen the play, Nat Turner play that was up in Philadelphia, it's called 1831 Turner Street. It is a play that deals with the life and times of our prophet and general, Nat Turner. We ask you, brothers and sisters, we have Brother Gus is going to be coming in town to Washington, D.C. to be there live, and many brothers and sisters around the country. But we're asking for donations. If you go to the War on the Horizon site and go to our homepage, we're trying to raise $10,000 by the end of January for the play. For those who have not seen it and don't understand the cost involved, it costs double that amount to do what we're trying to do. But we're just trying to raise some money to make it so that we can do it over and over and over again. And we'll be giving more information on that, but we will ask that you try to go donate to us whatever you have that you can afford. And then we also want you to come out and enjoy it, because it's going to be absolutely phenomenal, and you can bring your children out to it, and you're going to love it. So we wanted to make that announcement, and it's going to be the day before. Many of you have, if you work a job that you have the federal holidays off, it's the day before President's Day. So it's the Sunday before President's Day, so you'll have that Monday off. So see if you can make it in town to the Washington, D.C. area. We're going to also try to have it live so that you can pay to watch it live online and enjoy it from wherever you are in the country. So we're trying to put together some institutionalization of this nationalism so that we can move this war forward. So with that said, I want to say thank you, Brother Gus T Renegade. Thank you, Sister Justice. Thank you, brothers and sisters out there, for listening to this. We hope it's been constructive, and we will see you on the battlefield.
WarOnTheHorizon.com. Please support. It should be not only Gus in Washington, D.C., it should be Gus and Justice coming to Washington, D.C. to partake and hook up with everybody. So please support. The address again, WarOnTheHorizon.com. We are incredibly appreciative for you to spend 3 hours hanging out with us on your Friday evening. We are indebted. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We will definitely be in touch and just continue your needed and just invaluable efforts, sir.
Well, we appreciate it, and we'll see you on the battlefield. Hold that.
Context of White Supremacy signing out. Thank you.